I thank God.
Oh no.
Good morning.
How buddy?
Hey.
How you day?
Hey, your day is looking very good.
Is it? Okay. Tell me. How is your day looking?
What is this new look?
What look?
What did you have yesterday?
Fish.
Ah, no wonder.
No wonder what.
The question should be, what did you have this morning?
Omo. The
See?
coffee.
See? Have you had that? Response?
The coffee that I've drank this morning. Na long thing.
All right. Right.
So what happened? What was up with the coffee?
I had to drink coffee this morning because I woke up and couldn't get back to sleep.
I thought the whole
What did you
purpose
have?
of waking
Arabica
up was so
or
that you don't
Robusta?
go back to sleep.
No, like earlier on in the morning. See, I've been awake for quite some time now. So I woke at
Yes.
about 2 and couldn't get back to sleep. And then it was time to get up. And then,
But I still don't understand.
what don't you understand?
The
Sisi?
purpose of waking up is so that you stay awake, isn't it?
No, but now when you've woken up and you've not
You're
had
saying you
adequate
lost sleep.
Yes. So then the coffee has to step into,
So you took coffee so that you could go back to sleep.
No.
This was this morning.
I
when
think
had
she was
the-
substituting the sleep with coffee.
Oh, Lord.
So coffee acts as a good substitute for sleep.
All right.
That one I get.
Okay.
I'm certain that that particular perspective is supported by science. Yes.
People wouldn't even allow me answer the question.
Lose sleep more often, Ndu. You're looking very good this morning.
Oh, I thank you, Mr. Latif. Asante sana.
Have fish, lose sleep. See, now we are already understanding some of these things.
That we're
So
really...
don't have fish for dinner.
Oh, yeah, because it takes away my sleep.
Yeah.
This could be a thing, you know.
What time did you eat the fish?
At about 6:45.
See?
What is what?
See?
What?
That's the thing.
What?
6:45.
Uh,
You can't eat fish at 6:45.
what time? Thank you, Uncle. What time are the people supposed to eat this fish?
You either eat it at 5, 4, or if you really must, eat it around 9. But in between, it causes problems.
According to the book, according to Siti Muga.
Well, I'm just telling you what
So
has happened.
what was
to you.
that then? At 6:45, what was it? Was it a
was
snack?
dinner.
Was it? Are you in high school?
Why?
Are you in boarding school?
Why?
What are you eating at 6:45?
What time do people eat dinner?
Sure. After the sun has set.
You
The sun
need
sets
to
at
be aware
5:30, we're-
that it is important to eat and have a full belly as you go into the night because you never know what's going to happen in the
I don't understand what's wrong with you people.
You may not even know where you may be required to go. So that full belly is very useful.
Yeah, you're likening me to a night runner.
No, I am merely stating it is important.
You don't have
was
late
full.
lunch and then call it dinner.
That was almost 7 p.m. Come on. You have late lunch and call it dinner. Okay. I'm glad to know that both of you gentlemen are fine.
Yeah, we're glad to see that you're fine. Welcome to the show, everybody. Today we will have some good interactions with various people. We'll be speaking with a judge of the East African Court of Justice.
Sounds so prestigious.
Yeah, well, we'll be speaking to His Honor, the Honorable Judge Charles Nyachae. He was the chairman of the now defunct Constitution Implementation Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution. For the first 5 years of this Constitution, they were right there spearheading the implementation process. So we'll be speaking to him about the implementation and various other things. Then we'll also be speaking to the president of the Law Society of Kenya.
I think everybody heard president of. And then
Yep, of the Law Society of Kenya. The relationship between the judiciary, the legislature, the executive arms of government, the constitution, the relationship between some of these organizations, professional organizations, with various arms of government, the civil society, and all. So we'll have those conversations. But first, let's begin where we always begin, fellow Kenyans. Is the curve still flattening?
well, according to what CS Rashid Ahmed told us yesterday, no deaths and 318 recoveries. Excuse me. As Kenya's virus cases rise to 34,315. Out of a case sample load of 1,000, 682, 114 people tested positive for COVID-19. And this was in the last 24 hours. No fatalities yesterday. A number of people having been discharged from hospital. Another 318, rather, have been asked to go home when they were declared COVID-free. And this brings the recoveries in the country so far to 20,211. So, out of 1,682 tests done, 114 people tested positive. I guess from these numbers, all contributing to this narrative that the curve is indeed flattening and cases in the country are reducing. However, still against the backdrop of the fact that tests in adequate number are not being done. And those tests, the samples, the kits that you're asking about, Eric, still have not made their way to the country.
Where are they? What's up?
I don't know.
So this is confirmed by Dr. Aman, the ministry.
They're still waiting to receive more test kits so that they can do more tests. If you look at the number, whereby a few weeks ago they were doing 6,000, 7,000 tests every 24 hours. But now they're at 1,682, just as an example over the last 24 hours. And the reason why is because they just don't have enough.
Was it not a previous week when we were promised that this week?
No, actually, it was the week before last. We were told it would be last week.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. So now we're being told it's next week.
They're on the way.
Okay.
So now there's no time frame that's being given because, things that are on their way, now you can't say when they'll come.
Part of the things that KEMSA was supposed to procure? Or is it part of the things that they were given orders to procure?
Who even knows where this thing is coming
don't even know
from?
if it's donation, if it's being bought, don't know if it's being sourced. Don't know.
You know, this is interesting because this is something we're going to have to discuss later on. And the president did issue an order, a presidential decree, as I may call it, a while back about the transparency in such matters so that when we are having this discussion, we know who was supposed to supply, where it is coming from. But it appears that the executive order of 2018 was completely ignored.
The thing is that then, if we're looking at what the World Health Organization said a couple of days ago, and even what they've said today, one of the things that you cannot pick out is that you really cannot know the true picture of the case footprint in Kenya if you're not testing rigorously. And it's just, before we even go into any kind of conspiracy, anything out of that, you just can't know what the numbers are in Kenya if adequate testing is not being done. Okay, and we can't say that any country is testing adequately because you would have to do, millions per day. But you can't do under 500,000 tests in a population of 47 million and say now that you have an adequate idea or an adequate picture of what the COVID footprint is in this country. You just can't. It's not possible. And so unless we're choosing to just ignore,
but is that not part of the discussion that we're currently having with WHO?
Right.
Because they have raised that question and said, folks, you actually cannot declare and say that you're flattening the curve.
And in this case, it's not being discriminative of an African country anywhere in the world. Unless you're testing rigorously, you really can't tell what the actual picture is. You can't.
We're testing, 1,000?
1,000.
A day.
1,000, 2,000, 3,000.
And what numbers have we reached in terms of our testing?
Just under 500,000.
Okay, out of a population of
47 million.
You're talking about 1%.
And is 1%? I mean, let's look at it from the world of research. Is 1% an adequate number against the population to then be able to use this and use it as an indicative factor of what?
It's not an adequate sample size.
There you go. It's not.
It's not. The only thing that number tells you is that some effort is being made. And then if you describe the effort, you may be claimed that you're being insulting because it's dismal.
Look at a country like the United States, where there are 6,257,571 cases, population of 331 million, and they have done 83,350,119 tests. So they've done just under a third. They've tested compared to the population, they've done just over a third of tests. We also understand that a lot of these are repeat tests among individuals, but still, if you look at that, they're getting to 100,000, just under a third of those. Okay, so now if you put it in percentage, about 3% of the population, more or less, has been tested.
If you do not take testing seriously, as you correctly put it, how then can you claim to have a clear understanding of the prevalence of this particular disease in your country? You actually cannot. And so for planning purposes, even when we talk about we want to do this, we want to do the other, we're actually shooting in the dark. That is the reality.
South Africa, 628,259 cases with 3,705,408 tests having been done so far.
How many?
3 million.
Okay.
3.7 million
tests have been done in South Africa.
What's the population of South Africa?
57 million, 59 million rather.
We are just under 10 million less than them.
Yeah, and have done a sixth of what they've done in terms of testing.
Lovely.
Isn't it? Russia now has crossed that mark and is at 1 million cases with 17,000 deaths. Brazil also very close to 4 million. Yesterday we looked at India and they were at 3.5 million. India has recorded almost 200,000 cases of COVID-19. And it looks like a huge number in a day, right? But we're still looking at a population of 1 billion people. Mexico with the 6,500 cases over the last 24 hours with 827 deaths. So they're still looking at 10% of the population of the cases resulting in death. Okay, the numbers still continue to rise around the world. And still Korea with those issues. And now Korea having 2 deaths, whereby they had seen a decline. They now see an increase in cases and now unfortunately have recorded some deaths. And they've been in the news quite some concerning this. Okay, so yeah, it's still a thing, guys. It still is.
Okay. Learn to live with it. That's where we all are. It's 6:15. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's look at the skies, see how the weather is going to look like today. And then we'll look at the headlines, the main headlines from today's newspapers. Good morning.
You're on app. Cloudy skies in Nairobi this morning. We are looking at highs of 25 today and lows of 11, and those partly cloudy conditions will continue through the day. Nyeri is partly cloudy at 12, highs of 23 and lows of 11. Nakuru, clear skies this morning at 12 degrees, going to highs of 24. That'll change later, though, into rainy conditions and lows of 11. It's 11 degrees and clear skies in Eldoret, highs of 22 with a chance of rain later, coming down to lows of 10. 19 degrees and clear in Kisumu. It'll go to highs of 29 and lows of 18, and partly cloudy conditions later. Clear skies in Kakamega at 14, highs of 26 and lows of 13, with a chance of rain not too far from now. It's partly cloudy in Mombasa, and anytime now the heavens will open into a shower, highs of 29 and lows of 23. Partly cloudy conditions in Malindi at 24, highs of 28 and lows of 23. Stepping out of Kenya now into Kampala, where it's partly cloudy at 19 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 17, and a chance of rain later. There's also a chance of rain in Dar es Salaam today, going to highs of 28 and lows of 21. Partly cloudy conditions at the moment at 22. Mostly cloudy in Johannesburg at 8 degrees. It'll go to highs of 17, come down to lows of 7. Lagos is partly cloudy at 25, and again, it is the rainy season, so it continues into rains later with highs of 29 and lows of 24. In London, clear skies this morning at 11, going to highs of 22, and partly cloudy conditions later, coming down to a low of 10 and 13 degrees. Clear skies in Paris, going to highs of 22 and lows of 12. And finally, scattered showers happening in New York. It's still Tuesday night. However, it'll go to highs of 26, and they'll wake up to the rain, which will last well into Thursday. And we'll look at the rest of the skies as we come back.
Nairobi. 18 minutes after 6. Remember, the live stream is up, www.spicefm.co.ke, and on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Spice FM KE. Let's hear from the proverbial sage with the proverbial proverb.
He that digs up a grave for an enemy may be digging it for himself. He that digs up a grave for an enemy may be digging up for himself.
There's a Swahili proverb that goes like that.
Yes.
Mchimba kaburi,
Yes.
ajichimbia mwenyewe.
Yes. And many other communities have similar proverbs that, or should we say, proverbs that have a similar meaning. Yes. Or point in a similar direction.
Quite poignant.
Quite.
It's a poignant point.
Poignant point.
Okay.
Let's look at the headlines this morning. So where do you want to start?
Sealing the fate of Obado. Impeachment. Raila's party, has to be Raila's party, demands immediate resignation of Migori governor, who has been a thorn in the flesh of okay.
Okay, let's start again.
Okay,
The
so
thorn in the former flesh.
Raila's party demands immediate resignation of Migori governor, who has been a thorn in the former PM's flesh, or else he be kicked out. And it's the first time we have seen, it was called historical yesterday, that a party has kicked out someone based on their behavior. And they have resolved to send Obado home. They ordered his immediate impeachment yesterday of the governor who is facing corruption charges. It was arrived at in Nairobi, and the Migori MCAs, who are members of ODM, said the party leadership agreed to boot the second-term governor, whose tenure has been characterized by controversy. Out of the 41 invited MCAs, 37 attended the meeting. Migori has 40 wards and ODM has 41 MCAs, 27 elected and 15 nominated. The remaining 13 were elected on other parties or as independents. According to ODM Chair John Badi, due to corruption charges leveled against Obado and the decision by the court to bar him from accessing his office, the party, in consultation with county MCAs, have resolved to have a motion of impeachment against the governor initiated immediately. The party also resolved to have Deputy Governor Mahanga Mwita take over the responsibility of running the county. So, after a day-long meeting with the MCAs, they called on Obado to resign, saying the legislators have resolved to impeach him as soon as possible.
Well, they seem to have people who agree with them. 2 watchdog committees.
Yes.
You have the Senate Public Accounts and Investments Committee and the National Assembly Public Accounts Committee. They say the move is a strong statement in the fight against corruption.
Is it?
So they say. So they say. What I'd like to see is this. we have governors who have such cases in court. We have the governor of Busia, one Mr. Peter Ojamo. We have Mike Sonko Mbuvi. We have Moses Kulal. They have similar cases, and there are others which haven't perhaps hit the headlines, but they are in the queue. I would like to see if these committees will hold on to that particular perspective when it begins to move along those lines and more governors.
I've always said that if there is a whiff of something, I believe the thing is step down. Step down. You cannot hold an office which is supposed to invite at least some semblance of honor, and then you have this kind of taint on your image or on your name. Even if it is not true, let it be that you step aside and let investigations be done. And if you come out smelling like a rose, well and good, continue with your work. However, it should not be that people are holding on to power when you have this kind of allegations leveled against you over and over again. It's not the first time.
And you're suggesting that it happens in which country?
This one, Kenya, but okay. Things of dreams.
It would be a wonderful thing if people took responsibility
for their actions, yes.
Yes, and went about
for their alleged actions,
displaying their commitment to the rule of law by such actions. But do you, in reality, see this happening?
Well, no, and then that's why you have things like this, where it said that in initiating impeachment proceedings against Governor Obado, ODM becomes the first political party in Kenya's multi-party history to impeach its own governor for gross misconduct and corruption. Baba sets a precedent for all other political parties in Kenya.
Well, ODM has many other governors. Let's wait and see.
Yeah, so this is the only governor that ODM has found that
surely
is one is
or only leader. Let's say leader.
Only leader, right?
Well,
this case is in court, and there are issues that have been raised, of course, even by the MCAs. So let the MCAs go to the county assembly and let them discuss it. I think it's a good precedent, because this also ties ODM to taking the similar action elsewhere. Once they've started this way, so everybody will be like, so why did you do this to Obado and you're not doing this to
somebody else?
Somebody else.
Poof.
They've raised their own bar.
No, they have actually raised their own bar completely.
Yes.
And believe me, that question is going to be asked over and over again.
Yeah.
Yep.
You've taken this route, so let's see what other governors or what other leaders
Let's see consistency. When, yes, when you have cases where other governors who have an allegiance to that party come up with similar issues.
The other thing, though, is when this thing goes to the Senate, how is the current politics in the Senate likely to play out if it goes to the Senate within this period when we have this whole Team Kenya and the other side jostling over the revenue formula? Do you think these guys will be emboldened and just decide, let's show them?
Yes, they will.
The Team Kenya?
Yes, they will.
And they say we are 25, we have the numbers, so
they will.
Bring it.
This thing is going to keep playing out. Remember, one of the things that we mentioned during the time when we were talking about COVID, in 2018, the president actually issued an executive order. And the executive order was that the government of Kenya, and the procuring entities within it were supposed to publicize the identities of government suppliers. Okay. Identities. He issued one the other day also and said it's not just entities, you need to also mention the directors.
Put it online.
This particular directive was ignored completely.
Yeah.
Completely. So I'm waiting for the consequences of this. I'm waiting. A new one was issued, yes, but it's like a replica of just the other one, which was ignored, resoundingly ignored completely.
Yeah, even this one saying, put all those processes online. Now the first thing they'll tell you is we are procuring a system that will allow this information.
Oh, my friend,
to be easily published.
That talk
so
of the
it'll take
system,
a while to have a system.
That talk of the system is already in place. It has actually begun with the corridors of government. Oh, yes. Anytime you talk about improvement, people will talk technology.
Yes.
And they will say, we are thinking of bringing in a system that will
do this, and the other.
And those systems never cost anything that isn't in the billions. They never do. So why don't we wait and see what sort of system that will be suggested.
Okay. Talking about parties taking action against their members, KANU has expelled 4 nominated MCAs for misconduct.
Nice.
The 4 of them have been expelled for misconduct and failure to adhere to party guidelines and code of ethics. What do you think that they have not done? I'll tell you what they haven't done. They have not been remitting the monthly membership fee.
Oh, that's misconduct.
It is.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
yeah.
not adhering to party guidelines and code of ethics. Yes. They have not been remitting that. So these 4 MCAs in West Pokot, Grace Rengay, Jacqueline Ripo, Nancy Chombir, and Josephine Chepkurum, have received expulsion letters signed by KANU Secretary General Nick Salat, which means that they have lost their seats. Done, dusted, 4 more MCAs to be nominated by KANU to the
You know what
County
is,
Assembly.
it may even sound facetious, but if you look at the rule book that governs the functions of many of these political parties, you may find these fellows are actually keeping within the boundaries of those dictates. It's not as though they've made it up.
No?
Yes, you'll
No,
find
no,
the
no.
party requires.
Yeah.
And if you do not
If you do
abide
not,
by
then-
those requirements, then what we're now reading are the consequences.
Guidelines and code of conduct. You need to follow them so that you are, doing the right thing.
Absolutely true.
Expulsion and survival. Before we go into the break, there's a judge of the Employment and Labor Relations Court, Justice Njage Barete, has survived a motion to remove him from office after a tribunal appointed to investigate his conduct cleared him. The tribunal was chaired by retired Court of Appeal Judge Al-Nashir Visram, and it ruled that the allegations of gross misconduct, bias, impartiality, breach of the Constitution against the judge were not proved to the required standard, and they recommended that the President Uhuru Kenyatta reinstate him. Some of these things just happen under the radar. So, for example, this issue of this judge, this had happened, the president had suspended him in accordance with the law, formed a commission in accordance with the law. Commission sat, listened, reviewed all the evidence brought before it in accordance with the law. Commission has presented its report in accordance with the law and given a recommendation to the president in accordance with the law.
And now we are listening to it and reading about it in
In
accordance
accordance
with
the law. Coming up to 6:30, let's take a break. What's happening on the roads this early Wednesday morning? Let's hear from Nduoko, who will be updating you where you need to avoid. But also, if you know anything that she needs to talk about, Spice FM KE on Twitter. Good morning.
Okay, it looks like it could be a good Tuesday morning. Let's start on Mombasa Road, where it seems to be flowing nicely at the City Cabanas, going then down towards the CBD. Not much traffic this morning, already looking pretty good. Hope it remains that way at least for some time. Let's look at the Thika Superhighway, where those roadworks have been completed. It would be nice if traffic flows as it is at the moment, freely into the city without any issues. In and outbound is looking pretty good. Okay. Coming out of Westlands, it's moving slowly, but it's fine. I don't think we have much to be worried about now. If you did leave earlier in good stead, we'll see what it looks like in about a half hour or so. It's likely to clog up, guys, just from what we are used to. But if you're out and you're early, this is the time that you will not experience any traffic on the roads. We'll also take a look at what's happening in other cities and towns across the country as concerns traffic, but now it's looking good. Now's the time to get out early. As they say, the early bird catches the worm, or in this case, catches the free road. Spice FM KE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter. Just in case you get stuck somewhere or you find a route that nobody knows about, do share.
It's 28 minutes to 7 o'clock. A very good morning to you wherever you are. If you're in Malindi or its environs around Kilifi, 97.7. Eldoret and its environs, 96.7. 102.5 Kisumu and the surrounding areas. Mombasa, crossing over into some areas of Kwale County, 102, 87.9 and 94.4 in Nairobi. In Nakuru and the surrounding areas, going all the way into Narok, and I guess into Bomet and Sotik, 96.0. So we've a caller who's just called in. His name is Kiplagat. He says he's been following us of our live stream on Facebook, Spice of MKE. Today, he's tuned in on 96.0 from Bomet. Karibu sana, Bwana Kiplagat. And thank you for tuning in. Ndu,
Yes.
headline, interesting one.
So, Mwilu out to scuttle her trial, according to the DPP. The Director of Public Prosecutions has accused Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu of frustrating the hearing of a petition seeking her removal from office. Through the Secretary of the Public Prosecution, Dorcas Odur, the DPP accused Justice Mwilu of secretly going to court and obtaining orders stopping the Judicial Service Commission from proceedings with the hearings of the case against her. According to Odur, it is a mockery when she continues sitting at the JSC and conducting disciplinary hearings against other judges while frustrating the conclusion of her misconduct case. She has come to court with unclean hands and should not be allowed to drink from the pure waters of equity. It does sound quite poetic, but this is exactly what she said.
The who of equity again?
Yeah. Should I say it again? You like it? Eh?
Yeah,
Let me read it
yes.
again. It is a mockery when she continues sitting at the JSC and conducting disciplinary hearings against other judges while frustrating the conclusion of her misconduct case. She has come to court with unclean hands and should not be allowed to drink from the pure waters of equity.
This individual has waxed very lyrically.
I'm telling you, and her name is Dorcas
Dorcas
Odur.
Odur.
Thank you very much. Chalice. Okay.
Chalice
Poisoned one.
and Chalice. But the DPP made the claims in an application in which he is seeking, alongside the Director of Criminal Investigations, to be enjoined in a suit in which the DCJ has sued the JSC Disciplinary Committee investigating her conduct over claims of bias. So it's not just her, it's even the commission on which she sits. They're saying, you are being biased and you're not allowing this case to be tried with equity. Justice Mwilu had on the 17th of August obtained orders stopping the JSC committee from continuing with the hearings of complaints filed against her by the DPP and the DCI, which seeks her removal from office over claims of misconduct. Justice Weldon Korir ruled that the DCJ had disclosed prejudice she will suffer if the commission continues with the disciplinary hearings unless they are stopped pending determination of her suit. And the DPP is not happy because they say she's out to scuttle her own trial. She doesn't want this to happen, and she's using all the tools in her arsenal to stop this.
Every time a case like this comes to the fore, what we are witnessing is just the robust nature of our legal system. These debates, as you read about them, as you get to understand them, they explain to you many things that ordinarily you wouldn't even be concerned about and you wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, but now let us see how the law can be applied against a very senior member of the judicial system.
Well, they
This
say
is
that
interesting.
Go ahead.
it's good the way, these issues are even coming out in the public. So we're able to see this. This is the kind of back and forth that is happening between these two institutions. This is an independent office called the Director of Public Prosecutions. This is an independent organ called the Judiciary. This is a senior ranking member of this independent organ, in fact, the deputy head of this institution. And you're taking that person through the process of the institution that she heads. So should she step aside? Does she understand the law enough to actually go and say, no, I shouldn't step aside? It's interesting, like City is saying. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Is it?
Quite.
According to what?
The way Eric is going about this, I was waiting for him to say, yes, it's interesting, in a biscuit. No, sorry, it's in a minute, isn't it? Not a biscuit, isn't it?
It could
In
be.
it.
It could be a biscuit. It's interesting, though, that Ador also went on to say that the DCJ is giving the judiciary, the same judiciary which we're talking about, robust conversations taking place, a bad image by constantly trying to scuttle the conclusion of her disciplinary case, which has been pending for more than 1 year. So the judiciary from all of this is getting a bad image, because if you, as a judge of such high standing, really cannot...
It's not a bad image. It's actually a good image. It tells you, at least among other things, that the law doesn't discriminate against you or for you, in your favor, against you.
Yep.
Yes.
If a judge has actually gone and said, no, Justice Muilu should stay where she is as you continue with this, if you feel aggrieved by that decision, appeal.
Yes, by all means, follow the process.
Follow the process.
Let's see where the process takes us.
Let's see if it ends up in Justice Mombengoge, what Mombengoge will tell us. Because we know what she's been saying. You're in office. There's a case before you.
Sit down. Go and sit down, rather, over there.
Okay.
We
Other
live in
headline.
interesting times,
I'm
don't
telling
we?
you.
Yes, we do. 1.7 million jobs lost during COVID lockdown. By the way, this is the headline in the Business Daily. It is in the Nation. All our papers have actually carried this story in one form or the other.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this number doesn't seem set to reduce. It seems set to increase. And then the group of Kenyans who have suffered the most happen to be people who are under the age of 35. This is according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. They have quarterly surveys about employment, and this is what they are saying, that these are people who previously were in employment, but now, as we speak now, since COVID began, 1.7 million have lost their jobs. So it means that these are 1.7 families who do not know what they are likely to do next.
That's a very big number, because we're even talking about the census told us the size of the population that is actually generating income.
Yes, we're told.
Right? How many were they? About 25 million or so?
Yes.
Now we're talking about a very big chunk of that population not having employment. People who are already unemployed. Working age population, according to the census, was 27.4 million. And those who are currently unemployed now stood at 4.6 million during the census. Unemployment rate, Q2 2019, 4.7, Q1 2020, 5.2, Q2 2020, double, 10.4.
Yes.
It's a big number.
These figures are daunting, but they also bring to light the reality of COVID.
Yep.
And the need for not just planning, but ensuring that your planning is really forward-looking. You see, there's nothing that could have been done about COVID. COVID arrived, took everyone by surprise, and we were simply reacting to it. But having reacted to it, we now know it is with us. There are things that can be planned about or around COVID. The disease itself, the virus causing, the disease causing virus itself, the issues that come or that come into being because of it, the economic impact. These are things that can be looked into and looked into seriously. Because the one thing that certainly has to be a priority, How do you ensure that all these Kenyans who previously had an income and who don't, how do you ensure that they survive?
Yeah.
And when you talk about giving them a priority, apart from just declarations about the priority, what are the concrete plans that you have? Let's say until the end of the year. Let's not push until the next year.
Yeah.
Just until the end of the year.
Just until the end of the year. What is it that you can do to keep them engaged so they can earn a living?
Yes.
Because on the other hand, like you've said many times before, people just don't want handouts.
No, it is actually not wise. It isn't even wise to get people accustomed to just receiving handouts. Are there things that can be done? Well, there's a group of people who do need handouts because they're unlikely to be as productive as you may want them to be, but they were productive at a certain point in their lives.
Yeah.
So really, they have earned that position that they're in. But outside that, when you consider the numbers and the age group that suffers the most, these are people who still have energy. These are people who can do things. Now, it's a question of identifying it and ensuring that money is actually put aside for this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Come up with programs that will engage them and keep them occupied, keep them earning, and keep their minds busy.
If sufficient thought is put into this, a solution will be found. You know, some of these solutions may not necessarily be these 10 years type solutions. But no, if it is even a solution that lasts a quarter of the year, it's good. It gives you time to think about what next. In the next quarter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, for instance, when we listened to talk about the Kazim Tahani program, going beyond just telling the youth to sweep, but going into engaging them, going into training them, into acquiring some of these skills and being able to provide some of the services that are required right now, that would be something major.
It would be. It would be. You see, the thing is, if you look at the development plans that we have in this country, the development plans speak of things that need doing.
Yeah.
And they all go down to the level, not just of a county, but to the sub-county, to the ward, to the very basic level. Now, it is how do you use this workforce? It's a resource. And how do you measure the financial resources that you have and ensure that the utilization of it also benefits these people at the same time? It means we can't do business as we've done in the past. Even when we talk about procurement, even when we talk about deploying organizations to do these things, these organizations must also be encouraged to ensure that their planning should be in tandem with the needs of the time. Yes. Now, we may think that ensuring that you have a labor-intensive perspective may be moving backwards. We need to move backwards in this time and age because you need to engage people.
You need to keep them engaged.
Yes. So if you're going to be labor-intensive, so be it.
The CS for the National Treasury has actually spoken about that and saying some of the strategies that they're deploying are those to be labor intensive, to ensure that they're using a lot of human labor into many of the programs that are being rolled out by government, just so that people can get employed and people can get to do things.
It's important.
It's critical that this happens.
It's actually
but also, I think a lot of information needs to come out. Proper information at all times, so we can all see this is what is happening and this is how we can plug in. So wherever you are, these are the opportunities around me, and this is how I can plug in. Problem comes when that information is only left to a certain cadre of people.
Yes.
And then the rest of the population, the ones that actually need that information, don't get to know about it.
Okay.
It's a big number, though.
It is a very, very big number.
That's a very big number.
And it isn't as though this happened sometimes last year. No, it's from April.
From April.
Just a few months ago.
Good news, though, is that 11,500 of them who have been trained as teachers are going to get employed.
Yes.
The Teacher Service Commission says it has declared 11,574 vacancies for primary and secondary school teachers to support the 100% transition policy, with 1,000 promotions on the cards for very many of the teachers. Good move. Good move. And this is happening immediately. This is not something that's being planned for in the next financial year. No, this is now.
I hate to sound like a wet blanket, but I have to ask. There was a similar plan that was heralded, was touted, was talked about with regards to employing health workers. How did that one go? How many were actually employed? And how many have actually taken up their jobs? Because this was a while back.
Yeah.
Because this was one of the things that was being talked about as a response, a positive
To
response.
COVID.
To
Yes.
COVID, yeah,
Yes.
in terms of what would happen.
And we all know COVID hasn't gone anywhere.
And they were going to be at least in contract for at least a year.
Yes, exactly.
So a couple of months down the road, I think, and when we spoke to the Secretary General of the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, he was talking about the frustration
Yes.
because of the slow pace that this was taking.
And hiring had not actually been done.
Some were to be hired by the national government, others were to be hired by the county governments, and the county service boards were taking long to finish with the process. So it's
You see, it's in light of what we're now saying that I'm asking this question. Yes, we are hearing, we are reading, we are being told that 11,000 teachers will be employed. Okay, good news. But when?
when the plan is that they should be employed before schools reopen in January, right? So we are talking about
This is against a backdrop of, it is,
yes,
the discussions around children also going back to school. It's against a backdrop of the preparedness that we have within the school system, the government school system, to ensure the safety of the students when they do go back to school. And that is up in the air. If things have been done and haven't been said, then it is just that. They have been done, but they haven't been spoken of, so we do not know. But against that backdrop, all I'm hearing with the employment of 11,000 is uncertainty, not certainty.
and that's a problem that we have in this country, right?
Yes.
Things being said and you're not really sure if it's going to be followed up
Yeah.
with action, unfortunately. That just seems to be the way in which
Especially
it
when
goes.
it takes long. So doctors are supposed to be employed immediately. It was announced. They applied. What are you supposed to be doing? Just conduct interviews. If you want to conduct interviews 20 hours a day, just go ahead and do it. It's an emergency.
It is an emergency.
How long did it take for us to get those doctors? How long did it take for us to get the nurses and all the other cadres of medical workers employed? Some were taken up quite fast, like Makueni told us that they had already taken up some of their other cadres. Others were taking long, and this whole government process of how the government does its things. I think let's discuss about this. It's 12 minutes to 7 o'clock. The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room this and every morning is C.T. Muga, Nduoko, and Eric Latif. Time for a break. We'll be back shortly. Ten to 7. The conversation continues. You have another big headline, CT.
Yes, I do. We mentioned it in passing, but I now want to make it substantive.
Motion.
Tenders. How state agencies defied Uhuru. See,
Oh, yeah.
two things here that I want to bring to the fore. One, the way we phrase our headlines and the reality of what actually happened. But in this case, this headline is actually not misleading at all. If the president issues an executive order, I take the view that essentially it's an edict, it's an order. You are supposed to comply.
Yep.
Oh, no, sorry. Wrong language. You're supposed to obey. Okay. And this particular order was a very simple one. It was when we have government procurement, the identities of government suppliers must be known. Yes. He issued a second one recently against this backdrop of the KEMSA saga and went even further. Said directors of these particular organizations who have been shortlisted as pre-qualified suppliers must also be known. Every discussion that we've had around this has been about ministry officials, and we know very well the ministry officials themselves did not supply these things, not as themselves. But who are these people who actually supply it? Because they must exist. Social media has come up with names.
Suppliers are not government. Suppliers are private sector.
Precisely. So, and they must be known. I mean, for you to supply, surely you must be known. Because when you supply, it is understood at some point you'll want to be paid. So if you're going to be paid, you can't pay someone who's not known. Yes. So, it appears that the president's orders were disobeyed. It's not just a question of there being issues that cannot be easily explained, but it seems, according to this particular article that is the headline in the Star, what is being implied very strongly is that what the president has to say doesn't hold very serious sway at all.
It's basically telling us what he was saying on Monday, that now he expects that the Ministry of Health will digitize all its procurement processes, is hot air.
Absolutely. That's what we're being told here. And is that the case?
He has said this before.
Now,
it doesn't happen.
if you do not adhere to such a directive, what ought to be the outcome?
Should be very straightforward.
I should think so.
Yeah.
I should think so.
It should be straightforward.
If you're the person who is in charge, surely, does it therefore mean that you still, we're discussing Justice Mwilu. Now, if you're a government official and you hold a similar position, what then should happen to you? Because you were told what to do and you didn't do it.
Right.
You were given instructions, this is what I expect.
Now, if this is the case, and this was direct instruction from the government. When I say government here, I mean the president.
Yeah.
Told, do this. Do we then consider it to be a wonder that the process of fighting COVID is as slow as we see it? Is it then a wonder that we find that the blood donation service in this country is where it is?
No.
Is it then a wonder that the preparation for COVID in the counties is as it is? Is it surprising? So you ask yourself, surely what then prevents the government from taking action against these individuals? Because the people in charge are known. What prevents them?
I think there's a very deep-rooted problem.
Yes.
And we've talked about this many times before in our public service. And that stems from the mentality of umetupata hapa, utatuacha hapa.
Yes.
So we'll bid our time. When did you say? You want 30 days? All right, I'm not going to do it in 30 days. By the time you start, to remove me from office. So yeah, you can remove the PS, you can remove the CS, but you cannot remove anybody else. You have to follow some due process, which is lengthy. Remember when the president was even going into the procurement officers and saying, I've suspended the procurement officers within 30 days, and then they'll come back. They came back.
They were even moved around.
Moved around.
All you did was moved their intentions around.
Yep.
Let me ask this question.
There's something about a public service that is, has gotten to a point where it's invincible, even to its own leadership.
What I'm wondering is, there are a cadre of employees within our public service system who you never get to hear of. They're not permanent secretaries. They're not high up. They're somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
So you don't even know who they are.
Yep.
They're almost faceless. But it seems to be, to me, that's where the power actually is.
Those are the ones that are supposed to implement these orders.
Yeah, they're the runners of this machine. So
the president will issue the order, the PS will go and issue a circular. And
somebody will sign.
Circular will be sent around to everybody in the office. They'll receive it. They'll be like, metoka kwa PS pin pale. Weka. Haya, let's continue with what we're doing. Moving on swiftly.
Somebody said, but okay, where were we?
Huyu ajui vile tunafanya kazi hapa. Anafikiri surely 30 days. Hatu digitize. Sasa tuna digitize wapi? Kuna kata angalia kuna computers hapa kwa hiyo office. Digitize. vitu zingine watu wanasemanga kwa hii serikali. Continue working. Move on. What is the president going to do? Make noise to Mutahi Kagwe, make noise to Susan
They'll just make
Mochache,
noise.
move
After
them
some time,
around.
they'll keep quiet.
Yeah, that guy who was supposed to actually do it is sleeping peacefully. And you will not touch him.
You know, what you have to wonder is the number of skeletons these individuals have in their closets. And it looks like it's a hereditary position because at some point they do retire.
Yes.
But it looks like people just step in and continue.
They continue.
Yeah.
Yes. It never slows.
It's a self-perpetuating
yes,
system.
and it's
known.
consistent. I mean, just think about it for a single second. If we forget the nefarious effects of what they're doing, they are consistent and they are efficient.
Yep.
Very
efficient.
Now imagine if that energy was actually turned towards doing good.
To do good.
And just doing what they wanted to
How
do.
far would it actually go?
Yes.
Changing things around. Just do what. Look at this and say, all right, so in fact, this is what we've been waiting for a long time, that we want now to digitize these operations so that we don't even need to wait for an order. This is not something that requires the president to give a directive. It is something that you ought to come up and say, this is what we need to do. Madam PS, this is what we need. Take it to the CS takes it to cabinet, this is what we're going to do. All right, budgetary allocation, go ahead. Okay. Support from the Ministry of ICT. Get it done. Where are we now? So right now, we're still complaining that there's a disconnect between IFMIS and the procurement platform. Someone at the National Treasury, somewhere down there, you know, that middle cadre, somebody who's frustrated that
deciding that they're
just
not
that link.
do it.
So IFMIS and the procurement system are not running smoothly in tandem. So it's bringing in a whole other issue. It's another conversation that's happening. Frustration. Why?
So just a small thing, small detail, because I know time. But IEBC, just a small matter, they've hinted that it is 2024 that they will actually review constituencies. Okay, the Electoral Commission says it might defer the planned review of constituency boundaries until after the 2022 election. They're mandated the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to adjust the boundaries at intervals of not less than 8 years and not more than 12 years, with the Commission now opting for the 12-year deadline that expires in 2024. The last boundary review was done on March 7th, 2012. So according to IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati, the statutory time frame for the boundary review exercise is between 8 to 12 years, so they're still well within that time.
Still have time.
It's not going to be done before 2022, sorry.
Okay. Where we are right now, just leave it.
Leave it?
Just forget about it.
Well, at least they have stated it.
Yes.
So if we're having a debate, we will be discussing.
We know their position.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
At least we are no longer in the dark where this matter is concerned. So it's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yes.
All right. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here. In the next hour, we will be speaking to a former chairperson of the Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution, Mr. Charles Nyachae. And we will also be live on KTN Home. Good morning.
Okay, so let's look for it. Where is it today? Okay, so there's a problem today on Mombasa Road, and it started quite early, unfortunately. Before it was clear, but not anymore. The interchange, Kitengela and Mlolongo, just before you get towards Syokimau, is terrible. Everyone is overlapping, trying to get ahead as fast as possible, but it's not working. And so what has that created? An absolute standstill. It's not moving. Then as you get towards Syokimau and head towards the SGR, and then even further as you're going in the general direction of the Cabanas, it is not working. It's not moving, guys. It is a Wednesday morning, smack dab in the middle of the week. Let's see what that looks like in a short while. But for now, sorry, not going anywhere. Wayaki Way is moving to right around ABC Place. Head towards University Way. You shouldn't have too much drama there as you're trying to get into the city. Coming out of the Thika Superhighway, coming off of the Thika Superhighway rather, as you try to get into the CBD is not too bad. At the overpass there at the Globe Cinema, you should be all right getting into the CBD with no problems whatsoever. So just a few clog ups here and there. It'll look better in a short while. Take a quick glance at Jogo Road as you're trying to get into the CBD as well. Coming out of industrial area, coming off the main Jogo Road, you should be okay. Let us know also what you see. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. And let's see if we can keep it moving this Wednesday morning.
It is 2.5 minutes after 7 o'clock on this second day of September 2020, Wednesday. Happy Wednesday wherever you are. If you're in Nairobi on 94.4, or whether you're in Mombasa on 87.9, or in Kisumu on 102.5, Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7, Malindi 97.7, Nyeri 90.9, wherever you are around the world on www.spicefm.co.ke or SpiceFMKE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or also joining us on KTN Home this morning. Karibu sana, the second hour of the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. So last week, the 27th of August 2020, we celebrated 10 years of the promulgation of the new constitution. And we know the journey of the constitution. We even talked about the journey before, how we got into this new constitution. We've been talking about now the implementation. Even today, we'll be talking about the implementation of this in various facets of it. For example, at the between 8 and 9, we'll be speaking with the president of the Law Society of Kenya, Nelson Harvey, to look at the relationship between the judiciary and the other two arms of government. This is the executive and the legislature. We have seen the back and forth between the executive arm of government and the Judicial Service Commission on the appointment of some judges into the Court of Appeal. We've also seen, issues about allocation of budget by the National Assembly and the executive to the judiciary. All these are matters that we'll be discussing in the 8 o'clock hour. In this hour, we'll shortly be joined by Mr. Charles Nyachae. He was the chairman of the now defunct Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution. Now, this was a commission that was formed by the Constitution itself. That said, for this Constitution to come to life, several laws need to be enacted. Now, let's create a commission of experts that will be advising the government, that will be drafting the laws that are required, and in fact even had a timetable of the laws that will be required and when they need to be enacted by, so that the Constitution can now get life. And then so the CIC was then drafting the laws that needed to be enacted and forwarding them to the National Assembly through the Attorney General's office, and was also advising the government on the implementation of the Constitution. And they did quite some work for 5 years, all the laws that were required. Apart from one, the one that created the commission, the Commission for Implementation of the Constitution Act. They were not involved because, well, they were not there. So that one, they did not participate. That was the Kenya Law Reform Commission, of course, and the National Assembly with the Attorney General present. And then now we had all the other laws that were done with this. Quite a number of things that happened during that time, bringing into law. And we talk about this Constitution being a very good document. I mean, everybody who talks about this says this. This Constitution is hailed both locally and internationally. It's a very good Constitution. The laws that were enacted to give life to this Constitution, very good and sound laws. Well, some of them have been since been amended here and there, chini in reality of our times, so to speak. But still, we still have some very solid policy and legislative framework to run this country. So where are we then, City?
You know-
Are we still where we were in 2010 in terms
No.
of the hopes and aspirations? And at that moment in 2010, when you were there and you were watching as Mwai Kibaki held that document up, and Amos Wako wearing the full regalia and all the other dignitaries present, what you were feeling at that moment?
The drama was lovely. But the reality is this. 10 years down the line, what has become clear is that just the very idea of implementing this constitution fully is an extremely tall order. It's not a walk in the park, so to speak. It's not something that is going to be done in a day or a week or a year, or should I say even in 10 years.
Even a decade.
No, it won't. It's something that is going to be a work in progress for a very long time to come. Because one of the things that we clearly see is that the reality of the Constitution, for instance, brought in the devolved system of government. Now, the reality of the devolution, or the reality of devolution, has come not just with the baby, but with some fairly dirty bath water. Our headlines are strewn with all manner of matters that revolve around counties, the governors, and many of these things are not pleasant.
Yep.
Very rarely do you see a headline of something that has happened in a county that is positive. Very rarely. Not that it doesn't happen, but it's rare. And these counties would not have existed without the implementation of the Constitution. Again, we have a Senate, which for a long time was considered the sleeping chamber of old men and women.
Nyumba ya wazee.
Yes.
Rather unfairly so, but yeah.
Very unfairly. But in the recent past, there's been a very vigorous attempt to clearly move away from that image that was created. And we've seen some vigorous debate taking place. Again, it's a political body, and the discussions around or within the Senate have been politically inclined. But again, what we've seen with clarity is the robustness and the power that was always there within the Senate, but which was never actually put into use. So, all said and done, you look at the judiciary, all the arms of government, as they exist, and the independent stature that some of them have, are again as a result of this constitution. So you realize that we have moved forward, in a nutshell. We have moved forward, significantly so. Yes.
A lot of progress has been made.
I'm sure a lot of progress has been made, but I think, unfortunately, the progress that has been made has been covered then by a desire to see all of this enacted, if not at the same time, but at least in rapid succession. So with that desire then there probably is a blind eye having been turned to what has actually been done that has been of benefit, But then to say that, well, there's so much that we had planned, there's so much that came about in policy, there's so much that needed to be enacted that hasn't been done, that you just then somehow, unconsciously or consciously, ignore what has been done and what has been good for the country. Though, however, it is still necessary for those other things that have not been enacted, or those things for policy which has not been implemented, then to be done, regardless.
The political space, this is something we take for granted. When you hear politicians insulting the president, literally insulting the president, not just suggesting an insult, but actually stating an insult, and life goes on. You don't hear of anyone who was arrested as a result of the insult. And even when they're arrested for matters that relate to something they have done, it will be politically twisted and will turn around to be, it is because of what they uttered. That you can do what we are reading about tells you just how much things have changed. There was a time in this country you could not do that. You literally couldn't, at the peril of your own existence on this planet. That's the only time when you would venture in that direction. The fact that, remember, it's incremental. Maybe we are waiting for something momentous to happen for us to realize that change has occurred. It's actually occurring before our very eyes, and we don't seem to see it.
Again, I think it really does come from that desire to see so much at the same time, where you're coming from a place where nothing really did happen previously.
Yes.
Yep.
So you look for this huge momentous thing to come in, whoosh, one big change at a time, without realizing that it must be incremental, it must be gradual. It won't all come at the same time. And those who would see this new thing, this new life, probably were not privy to how, or wouldn't be privy to how it was before. So they then would not be able to appreciate the change. Those who would wait for it probably, unfortunately,
So you
would not
guys
be
are saying
around.
a step is a step. A
No.
step is a positive thing. As
Actually,
long as you've made 1 or 2 steps, you have moved.
I'm actually saying that we haven't made a step, we have made many steps. There have been many steps forward. You see, even as the steps are made, what also comes to the fore is not just the steps, but what obstacles the steps have to overcome in order for that forward movement to be made.
Let's speak to the man who was at the helm of steering now the bringing to forth of these laws. The Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution was chaired by Mr. Charles Nyachae, who is now a judge of the East African Court of Justice. He's joining us on the line. Good morning, Mr. Nyachae.
Good morning. Sorry, I didn't get your name.
You're in the Situation Room with Eric Latif, C.T. Muga, and Nduoko.
Good morning, lady and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
sir.
morning, sir. It's good to hear from you after quite a while. For the first 5 years of the implementation of this constitution, your name, your silver-haired goatee, and of course, all the words that you used to say were pretty common in local media.
Yes, we all have our crosses to bear. That was mine for 5 years.
Indeed. Charles, thank you very much for speaking to us. We are celebrating, of course, a decade of this constitution. As the man who was at the helm of the implementation in the initial stages, coming up with all the laws that are required, I'm just going to ask you straight up, what do you make of the progress that we've made so far in the implementation of this constitution?
Okay, let me answer that at a couple of levels. First of all, I think we should never lose sight of the fact that without more, having the Constitution looking over our shoulders, as it were, is a good thing. The fact that we are discussing the Constitution, the fact that we are measuring our actions and utterances and how we govern ourselves, all by reference to the Constitution, that is a good thing. Now, when I look back at the 10 years, I think it's fair to say that there are certain things brought about by the 2010 Constitution which will be difficult to claw back, if at all. Or if they are to be clawed back, it will not be without a fight from the general citizenry. That, for me, is a good thing. But having said that, I think it's also fair to observe that with the passage of time, a lot of people, especially those who we sometimes forget that there was quite a large, significant number of people who found, they may not have voiced it at the time, but they found the radicalism of the 2010 Constitution somewhat inconvenient. And over the passage of time, you tend to notice that some of them have gathered courage, and there are certain responses that would have been surprising in 2011, 2012, but now seem to be creeping back into the way that we order ourselves. Meaning for me that extra vigilance is required.
Mr. Nyachae, that sounds very cryptic. Can you be a little more specific, please?
Well, if you ask me a specific question, I was trying to give an overview. If you ask me a specific question, I will endeavor to answer it.
Okay. It would appear from what you're saying that there are elements within our society who had no intention whatsoever of allowing this constitution to actually see the light of day as it was constituted.
Without a doubt.
Yes. Now, what I'm asking is this.
Yes.
What are then some of the hurdles that you and your commission faced, and what are the hurdles that replicate again in the common citizenry with the same vigor with regards to the implementation of this constitution?
You see, Charles, there are those people that you have described.
Yes.
Came in different
shape and form.
I would say. Yes. Mm-hmm. You know, they did not all resist the constitution for the same reasons. When we started overseeing the process of implementation, a lot of our work involved legislation and regulations to implement the constitution. Mm. And you would sit with people who have been in the public service for all their professional lives.
Yes.
And you're telling them this is what COK 2010 requires of us.
Mm. Yes.
And they would shake their heads and they would tell you, government doesn't like work like that. And it has, we have been doing it and it has been working. What you are telling us,
it's foreign.
Just simply doesn't work like that. Mm. The most extreme example, and this is by no means unique. I'm just giving it as an extreme example to make my point. When we sat down with military officers and other officers from the defense sector to relook at what is now the Kenya Defense Forces Act. Admittedly, there are many things that we didn't know as civilians, but then getting everybody else around the room to accept this new concept of civilian oversight of the armed forces was a very difficult concept. And you can't blame them, as it were, because that's what they had gotten used to.
Yeah.
And then there were those who had practical issues. I remember the then Commissioner of Police. This was before we had the IG. When I took issue with him on the gender issue, he told me, my friend, then I might as well leave the job and go home, because how do you? There are certain things that cannot be done by both genders. Mm. So when you tell me that, unaniharibia kazi, afadhali niwache. The point I'm saying, I don't think these people really had any aversion to change as a matter of principle. It's just that they didn't see life in any other way.
It's the practical realities of it.
Yeah, from their perspective.
Yep.
Isn't that what the Constitution then presented, though, Charles? Wouldn't it have presented an opportunity for the country to see life then in a different way?
Well, that's exactly what we tried to communicate and what we tried to achieve in the roundtable discussions that led to the various pieces of legislation. But there's a third category that I was coming to, which is probably the most toxic, I would say, are those ones who I must say that this is mainly the political class. Those who just, for them it was simply inconvenient. They needed to do things that was easiest for them to achieve whatever aims that they had. So the checks and balances, the processes, the systems that are inbuilt into the COK 2010 simply were inconvenient things for them. And their resistance was a lot more subtle, because in a sense it wasn't as genuine as the first two categories that I have described.
Mm-hmm.
And it is this third category that again we should be worried about, and it is this third category that over a period of time, in a very subtle way, has probably begun the clawback process.
So the political class basically is the one that, when it suited them, spearheaded the conversation for a change of the constitution.
Yes.
But also they were not 100% honest that they wanted these changes that they were talking about.
100% is a high number. They were far from honest.
So what is it then that you would say was making them make all these pronouncements and promises? I mean, what, from your observation, what were they hoping to achieve? Were they hoping that we'd have a constitution and then keep rejecting it, or have a constitution and then they'd find a way of keeping everybody at bay and amend it to suit their needs?
First of all, if you look back at some of these political figures, you will probably begin to answer that question. You remember a certain prominent political figure at one point post 2002 famously said that now that the previous incumbent of the House on the Hill has left, then the issue of a new constitution is no longer a priority. Because we were pushing for it.
Yep.
Essentially to push the then incumbent out of the House on the Hill.
We remember that. We were reminded of this personality by PLO Lumumba last week.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a category of people who never really bought the idea. But I think the more specific answer to your question is that as far as the citizenry were concerned, they were so fed up over a period of time of the way things were run and needed a change. And the smart politicians supported the citizens to obtain this change in the form of COK 2010, I suppose with the expectation that they would be able to manage the implementation of COK 2010 in a manner that would not work against their perceived interests. Mm. I hope I'm not being too cryptic to use.
No, you're being as clear as can be in a cryptic way. But Charles, now that you actually bring in the citizens, we were discussing this last week on the show, and we were asking ourselves, with the enactment of this constitution, with Kenyans turning up to vote in a referendum and overwhelmingly voting yes for this constitution, were the citizens really ready for the constitution? Because it not only required change in some of the state organs, our political class, it also required change in the citizenry themselves. Were the citizens ready for the constitution?
Okay, I think the citizens were ready for change, and therefore, in a general, broad sort of sense, that one can say they were ready for radical constitution. But having said that, what the citizens didn't have, and sadly to date they don't have, is sufficient knowledge and understanding of both their rights and, very importantly, and I think that's what you are alluding to, their obligations under that constitution, so as to be, because the way the constitution works, it works best if people don't just assert their rights, but they also live in accordance with their obligations. And that's the part, and really that is what lawyers like you made reference to my friend PLO Lumumba. That's what they would describe as constitutionalism. And so we are in a situation that the late Professor Okoth Ogendo described as having a constitution without constitutionalism. And it doesn't work.
There is a side of the argument, Charles, also that, I mean, and just bringing that here to hear what you think on this, is that there's a certain part of the population who feel that they would be powerless when it came to something like this if the drivers, being the implementers of said constitution, have not the desire to implement. How then do they step in where they don't have the power?
If you think back to 2002, 2003, and this was before the 2010 Constitution, but there was this momentous political event, which was the change of guard in government after so many years since independence. And even without the 2010 Constitution, which was to come later, you had this scenario where, wananchi would themselves confront, policemen who they thought were violating the law and so on and so forth.
Yep.
Now, without a formal constitution, that was a scenario where the citizen, because broadly speaking, they knew the kind of society they wanted. That was the kind of situation where they were demonstrating that they do know what they want. Now, what had the citizen been empowered in terms of civic education and so on under the 2010 Constitution? Then the citizen would be able to do that in a much more formal way, and in a way that he would be able to make reference to the fact that you are a policeman or you are a public officer are violating this particular provision, either of Chapter 6 of the Constitution or the Leadership and Integrity Act, or whichever other legal provision pursuant to the Constitution. So I think the citizen is in the state that they are today largely because no effort was made to empower the citizen in terms of their understanding of the Constitution. Both in letter and spirit. And of course, you see, at the exciting political moment, this was not an issue. The time in the lead up to the referendum on the Constitution, when my friend Charles's village mates would say, no, a certain gentleman has read this thing
and it's enough for us.
Yeah.
This is enough for us. That was understandable because of the excitement of the moment.
Yeah, but not after, not in the implementation stage. Charles, let's take a break. Let's take a break. Yeah. We'll continue this conversation after this quick break. On the line with us is Charles Nyachae. He is a former chairman of the now defunct Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution for 5 years. He and his fellow commissioners advised the government, came up with, drafted the bills that are required to bring life to the Constitution, and of course also advised the government and various state agencies on their requirements and expectations of the new Constitution. That's what we are looking at today, the implementation of this Constitution, the successes, the challenges, and the way forward. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. It's broadcasting on Spice FM, it's on KTN Home, and we're also online on www.spicefm.co.ke. We're also live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Spice FM KE, 7:30. Time for a break. We'll be back shortly.
Looking at partly cloudy conditions, the sun peeking through those clouds, though, in Nairobi at 13 degrees. It's going to warm up a little bit more later, going to a high of 21 today. In Nakuru, 13 degrees as well, partly cloudy, and a chance of rain later on. Nyeri also coming out of those cloudy conditions this morning at 13. It'll warm up later, though, partly cloudy conditions too. And Eldoret, sunny and clear conditions throughout today. Currently at 13 and rise to a high of 20. It'll rise to a high of 27 in Kisumu. It's currently partly cloudy at 18 degrees. Kakamega also experienced some thunderstorms later at a high of 24, currently at 15 degrees and sunny conditions. In Mombasa, it's 22 and partly cloudy. There's rain every now and then. The sun will try to peek through those clouds, taking to a high of 26. And in Malindi at 24 degrees, it's partly cloudy. Go to a high of 30 today. It'll be warm, but it'll cool down with the rains later in the afternoon. Kampala is 19 degrees and partly cloudy, as is Dar es Salaam. The fog is quite low at 23. It'll come to a high of 30 and down to a low of 21. Johannesburg is 10 degrees and warming up this morning, going to a high of 19, coming down to lows of 9. And finally, for now in Lagos, is 25 degrees, and the rain is setting in early today. Only go to a high of 28, come down to a low of 17. Changed or not? It's being described as a nightmare, Mombasa Road, this morning, and it looks like it's going to take some time to get out of this one. It's moving just before you get to the SGR on Mombasa Road, but after that, it is bumper to bumper. And we also know that a trailer has fallen on a certain part of this road, so that is what is causing the traffic there. So until that is removed, it looks like Mombasa Road is going to have some nightmarish stories to tell today. Okay, let's look at other parts of the city. We see also coming off of Thika Road, getting into the CBD will not be too terrible. Kamarak Road is flowing very well. Traffic this morning is not an issue whatsoever. Kangunda Road also is looking good, flowing towards Outer Ring and then getting into the city from there. Yes, we already know Kitengela Mololongo is terrible. It's been an hour. Everyone is overlapping. We know that at the Signature Mall, that truck has fallen, so it looks like it's going to be a long morning there. We'll keep an eye on what's going on that part of the road, or in that part of the city. Let us know if you do see something else that we can share about, and at least try to keep it moving where it's not. Spice from KE on Twitter.
"26 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, and the conversation continues with Charles Nyachae, former chairman of the Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution. He is now serving as a judge of the East African Court of Justice. And in the room is Eric Latif, Nduoko, and C.T. Muga.
Mr. Nyachae, this little matter of devolution, for many citizens right now, if I may speak as a citizen and who falls into those numbers, at the level of counties, the entire exercise seems to have been more of a curse than a blessing, because the very things that were promised don't seem to have arrived and don't appear to have any promise of arriving soon. What can be done to turn around this perspective?
Okay, let me begin by acknowledging, alongside I think many people, that I think one of the better ideas in principle that are contained in COK 2010 is the system of devolution and what it is intended to achieve, especially taking decision making together with resources down to the lowest levels, so that the citizens feel that they participate in their own governance. Now, the challenge of implementation, I would say, began at the very onset, because devolution had been so hyped up, and the evils of centralized governance, especially at the physical front, had also been made so apparent that at the earliest opportunity in 2013, when the counties came into effect, the governors, aided and abetted by the national government, they chose not to read fully the transition provisions in the Constitution, and especially the provisions that contemplated what the Constitution describes as phased and asymmetrical transition. So they said, we want our functions. The Constitution in the fourth schedule gives us a list of functions. We want these functions, and we want them today. The unspoken part of that was that Mizetu Tupatie, what we do with them is our problem, not yours. That was the unspoken part. Now, combine that with the expectations of Mwananchi, which arose from the experiences that they had from the centralized administration, and the evils of that system that had been expressed over a long period of time, and therefore the expectations were super high. And with the benefit of hindsight, were not going to be easy to achieve. The third reason that, in my view, has made devolution not come out as exactly as it was contemplated is that the devolution, the statutory part of the devolution below the ward levels simply did not take place. Yet that is contemplated in the Constitution.
What part is that?
Oh, it's supposed to go right down up to the villages, but the county governments are supposed to give effect to that. So, but the Constitution provides for the levels up to the ward level, with the expectation that the county government would take this process right down to the village level.
This is interesting.
And then,
something to learn. Is this what they say some of the governors have been doing with the creation of the ward administrator, or is that different?
No, the ward administrator, that is already in the existing law. That level is provided for in the Constitution, because a ward is the lowest unit that the Constitution provides for. That's where you have a member of a county assembly.
Yeah.
But below that, there's supposed to be further devolution. Again, it's supposed to be done as each county is ready to do it.
Okay.
But I'm not aware if it's been done.
I hear you saying so many things that should have been done and were not done. Certain things that should have been implemented and were not implemented.
Those are arguments up to today. But the origin of that problem is that we should have costed the functions so that the funds would then follow the devolved, the functions, the costed functions as they're devolved, then the funds follow them. Now, all these are issues, and if you get time to read our reports, and especially if you just take the one report, the exit report of CIC, you will see all these are issues that CIC brought to the fore. But at the end of the day, we were not constitutionally mandated to implement. Our job was to oversee the process, and that we tried to do.
I'm curious to know what you think then about a constitution which is being amended, or the thoughts towards the amendment of a constitution with talks of referendum now, where it is very clear that the implementation of the constitution as it is wanting. So what do you feel then about amending it in present day, where over the last 10 years, implementation, even to an acceptable level, has not taken place?
In an ideal situation, the two are not mutually antagonistic. The Constitution has over 250 articles. Now, as I sit here, I really don't know what articles are proposed to be changed, because I choose not to subscribe to the various rumors one hears. Until we see, what is formally being proposed to be changed. But the reason I'm saying that they are not mutually antagonistic is that whatever it is that is identified as needs to be changed, and that is perfectly in order if, as a country, we have changed our mind about a particular provision, and we now want to change it. But even as we do that, it will help us greatly as a country if we can look at the Constitution in its entirety, and first of all, consider that and be sure that what we are seeking to change has failed, not because of our failure to implement it properly, but because for some other reason other than implementation. That's even simply for the reason that we have changed our mind, which is perfectly legitimate.
Which is okay.
But from where you sit,
which is okay.
From where you sit, Charles, from where you sit, and looking at the conversation that's now happening around the country, looking at the implementation process, and what you talked about, vigilance against a political class that would be willing to claw back on some of the gains that were proposed in the Constitution. Do you feel as like the citizens want change, some changes to the Constitution?
The citizens?
Yes, not the political class.
I think the general mindset of the citizen is probably worse than that. The general mindset of the citizen seems to be a distrust now of the Constitution, arising from the fact that they distrust those who are protagonists on both sides of the constitutional amendment debate at the moment. So that almost every Wanjiko, Atieno, and Fatuma that I happen to hear, they will be saying something negative about the intentions of those involved in the debate on both sides, as opposed to giving a view on the substance of what it is that is being debated.
Right.
So the problem, I think, is worse than you have framed it.
Which I want to bring back to something that we had discussed earlier, the issue of the responsibility of the citizen in living the spirit and letter of the Constitution. Just looking at one chapter, chapter 6, which is where the citizen would actually be able to exercise their judgment in the electing of leaders of integrity.
Yes.
And then we see that the conversation keeps happening on the non-implementation or the non-proper implementation of Chapter 6. Where do you think the blame lies on just that one chapter alone? Is it the citizens? Is it the political class? Is it both? But who bears the bigger responsibility?
You know, when we were writing the Leadership and Integrity Act, part of the process that we had adopted of the development of the laws to implement the Constitution was at some stage the more or less final drafts we would be invited to a cabinet subcommittee to so that the draft got cabinet approval and the necessary buy-in that would enable a government to present it to Parliament and support it so that it is passed. Now, you will recall that at this time there was the government that has variously been called coalition, Nusumkate, etc.
Yeah.
So I remember we sat in a room, a couple of my colleagues and myself, as well as my friend Professor PLO Lumumba, who was then was he director or he was the head of the
ESCC, yes.
The precursor, the previous anti-corruption body. And we sat in that room, and I remember we tried to convince the cabinet subcommittee as regards why the draft we had presented to them was the correct representation of the letter and spirit of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. And let me just say that in the room were some of the Kenyans who have historically been given some of the highest accolades for fighting corruption. And, you know, the response we got from them, including, as the PLO will confirm, at some point we were asked, are you people writing a law for human beings or are you writing a law for angels? And famously, PLO then said, gentlemen, I think from this point on we shall become spectators because we are obviously not adding any value to this meeting.
Wow. Now,
I'm telling you that a story so that you understand that Chapter 6 was destined to, and the Leadership and Integrity Act was destined to fall short of the expectations in the Constitution right from the word go.
Good Lord. What is how do we redeem it? I mean, because this is one chapter of the Constitution. This is the one piece of legislation of the Constitution that would ensure that we have leaders who can then move this country forward.
Good
leaders who would,
yeah.
stand for good governance, who would ensure that even this particular Constitution is implemented the way it was intended to be.
You know, I think when you deal with the political class, it's a question of interest. Sometimes the interests are diverse, and other times, like on that particular occasion in that room, clearly the political class spoke as one. So in answer to your question, there are provisions in that Constitution. The most radical provisions in that Constitution will be resisted for a long time. And my response to that, which really is what we instinctively did at that particular meeting, is to try and achieve what we can at that particular moment so that we don't lose the plot altogether. But there's clearly a need to keep revisiting if we are to achieve a lettered spirit of what the framers of the Constitution intended.
Absolutely.
Wow. Charles Nyachae, thank you very much for your insights this morning and for sharing with us the journey to the implementation or through the implementation of this Constitution and where you see it right now. We wish you all the best as you continue serving the country and the region. The ESCJ.
Asante sana, and thank you for inviting me, and do have a good morning.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Home. Time for a break. We will be back shortly. Good morning. So listening to Charles Nyachae and listening even to others who have talked about this Constitution, I get a feeling that we the people, when we were coming up with all these laws so that we can create a pact between those who govern us and ourselves, we basically forgot to really consider the people that we are creating a pact with. That the governors have their own interest, and we were looking at personalities instead of governors as one uniform class called a political class that will always, gravitate towards their own interests. So this is
it's
where
like
we are.
entering a marriage and you're the only one who was vested in it, and others are looking outside even before you sign the deal.
Others are getting on with their lives.
Properly.
And
So
they
even
will-
when you say that, then the responsibility then lies with the people in terms of implementation. How on earth are they going to do it if there is no interest on the other side?
But
The other supposed party, interested party, really their mind and their focus is clearly somewhere else.
But does it not resonate with what we see continuously, where issues that require action are actually treated with words?
But you see, that's the reason why people create a constitution. Because like we are saying, it's a covenant between the people and their leaders. So it's very clear that you, as the people, if you lose your vigilance, then the leaders are just going to do what they wanted to
But
do
what does a
in the
covenant-
first place.
what-
It doesn't matter what your covenant said if
Valid
you're not
very
vigilant.
valid point, Eric.
Sure.
If you lose your vigilance, this is not something you don't take a holiday on this one.
But it's got to be it's got to be both sides. Entering into a covenant means that you've made an agreement of commitment. You don't enter into a covenant with somebody whose supposedly interests are far beyond that. It's supposedly that you've come in on like mind.
Yeah, but
then
you
realizing
should not,
later that
you should not always get into that covenant assuming that the other person has 100% your interest at heart.
if they don't have 100%,
should always get
you
into
should
that
not
knowing.
get into the covenant.
But you must get into a covenant of some sort. Because this is where you are. You must actually get into a covenant. And if you trust this person 100% and therefore you rest on your laurels,
I think
then
it'd be stupid
you
to
are
trust
going to
100%.
be played.
I think it would be ridiculous to trust 100%.
The trust was in the Constitution, not the individuals. The understanding was that this Constitution would help set us on a path where these wrongs could be set right. Now, what we've heard is that right from the onset, the very implementation of what was supposed to set things right was being fought from the onset,
Yep.
even before we began the process of implementation. So when we're talking about an amendment, the amendments began then. The experts were asked, come up with what you think is ideal, and then they asked, what on earth is this that you brought here?
They're like, so this is what you've put in place, huh?
Okay, and where do you hope to implement this thing? Yes. But also, remember that one of the things that the debate around the Constitution has brought to the fore is exactly what people become when they enter the so-called political leadership class, and how their views on the citizenry whom they represent, what it evolves into being.
Yes.
It's one of complete and total disregard.
Disregard.
Completely. So let's get to the top of the hour. In the next hour, we'll be speaking with the president of the Law Society of Kenya, Nelson Harvey, looking at the relationship between the three arms of government, and especially focusing on the relationship between the executive and the legislature with the judiciary and what is happening there. So Nelson Harvey will be speaking to us. This is A Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 Nakuru, Eldoret 96.7, Nyeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7. And also this morning for the next hour as well, broadcasting on KTN Home and online on www.spicefm.co.ke. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock.
Okay, folks, Mombasa Road today is absolutely terrible, and the problem is that 2 accidents have occurred. A vehicle has veered off the road past the Signature Mall, and thereafter, about 50 meters ahead, a truck has stalled and is now diagonally across the road, and that's going to take some time to move. So the traffic, for some reason, but behind that and ahead of that, all the way to the SGR and then further down, is beyond bumper to bumper. It's crazy, guys. Mombasa Road definitely giving off those vibes this morning. Unfortunately, this is what we see. Cumulative traffic. It's heavy. It's outbound. It's also affecting traffic from Outer Ring that's heading toward Mombasa Road. So you have now this traffic on Outer Ring Road, which was previously flowing. It's not flowing anymore. So that's where we see it's going to be stuck. It's going to be there for a while. It's affecting traffic all the way down to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. As you head then towards Uhuru Highway, you're going to be greeted by what? Yes, more traffic. So it's that kind of Wednesday morning. We're going to have to sit pretty through this one, guys, and be as patient as possible. If you're stuck somewhere else, let us know. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. Everywhere else seems to be moving more or less okay, considering that it's 8 o'clock on a Wednesday. We'll take a look and see how that changes as we move along.
It's 2.5 minutes after 8 o'clock on this second day of September 2020. A very good morning to you and happy Wednesday. C.T. Muga, start the hour with today's proverb.
He that digs up a grave for an enemy may be digging it for himself or themselves.
He that digs up a grave for an enemy
may be digging it for themselves or for himself. You know, many of these proverbs, if stated as they are written, are really gender insensitive. It's always him. When it applies, it is actually, should we say...
cuts across all genders.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And that's a good one. No, so that's one of those that in Kenyanese we'll say, ukae ukijua. As you dig somebody's grave.
Translated, sit as you know.
Be knowing.
Actually, well put.
Be knowing. Let's now speak about the relationship between the three arms of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Joining us on the line is the president of the Law Society of Kenya, Nelson Harvey. And of course, we want to talk about what we've been seeing as a standoff, the standoff between the judiciary, the Judicial Service Commission, and the president, and the appointment of 41 judges that whose names were taken to the president and told, we have gone through an entire process, recruitment process. We have interviewed these individuals, and we believe that these 41 are suitable to be appointed as judges. The president, to date, has not appointed them. There has been back and forth. The issue has gone to court. Judges have delivered their rulings on this. There has been, a lot of conversation. The Attorney General has said one thing. The Chief Justice has said the other. And we still don't have these 41 judges taking up office. Now, the question that we want to ask this morning is whether this is also creating an injustice. But let's welcome our guest for this hour, the President of the Law Society of Kenya, Nelson Harvey. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Eric Latif.
Welcome to the Situation Room. You're in the room with Nduoko and C.T. Muga. Now, Nelson, let's just get straight into it and look at this standoff over the appointment of the 41 judges. What do you make of it? I know the Law Society of Kenya has made various statements around this, but I just want to hear from you this morning. Is this an injustice? Does the president have any grounds to halt these appointments?
Latif, what the President of the Republic of Kenya has done in the recent 1 year, insofar as the swearing in of the 41 judges is concerned, is a gross violation of the Constitution. I say it is a gross violation of the Constitution because the question as to the scope and power of the President, insofar as the issue of appointment of judges is concerned, is one that has been settled by courts of law in Kenya. It therefore baffles why a president who sought to uphold the Constitution will find it convenient to refuse to swear in judges. Mm-hmm. And when he's asked to explain the reason as to why he doesn't want to swear in these judges, he claims that he has confidential intelligence reports which indicate that some of the judges do not meet the integrity requirements for swearing in. Mm. And look, we have witnessed the bickering between the executive and the judiciary. The Chief Justice insisting that these 41 judges must be sworn in because the wheels of justice cannot move smoothly when we don't have the judges who are required to preside over the hearing of the cases. And more importantly, it interferes with the independence of the judiciary. And if the judiciary cannot function in the manner in which it's supposed to function in a constitutional democracy, of which Kenya is, then we are likely to degenerate into a state of anarchy. Therein lies the problem, Latif.
If I may ask, Mr. Harvey, is there anything within our Constitution that would enable our legal system to take action against the president if we take the view that indeed he is abrogating the Constitution?
Yes, the Constitution has provided for this. The president may be impeached for several grounds, one of which is a gross violation of the Constitution. Now, taking into account that the judiciary is one of the arms of government, which plays a pivotal role in the determination of disputes amongst citizens and between citizens and the state, it becomes evident that when the President of the Republic of Kenya refuses to swear in judges, and a court of law, and in this particular case, this matter went before the High Court, and the High Court determined as a matter of fact and law that the President had violated the Constitution in his failure to swear in the judges. Now, whose responsibility is it to oversight the President and remedy this transgression? Mm-hmm. This responsibility is given to Parliament. Parliament has the power to initiate proceedings for the impeachment of the President. But does Parliament have the goodwill? Does it have the wherewithal? It has the wherewithal. I doubt whether it has the goodwill. I say so because it has been my position, which is strongly held by a majority of Kenyans, that Parliament has been emasculated by the executive. And this is because if you look at the manner in which the National Assembly and the Senate act, it is as if they're acting on express directions from the executive, by extension from the president himself. And lately, bearing in mind that there was a handshake, it looks like there is a pact between the President of the Republic of Kenya and the person who will otherwise have been the leader of the opposition.
If we're looking at the reasons as to why the appointment of these judges has not taken place, in your opinion, is there any merit in what the president has given as a reason as to why they have not been appointed? Or do you see it as a smokescreen for something else?
There is no merit whatsoever because the Constitution itself has contemplated a situation as the one which the president claims is a predicament that precludes him from swearing in these judges. What is the president supposed to do? The president, through the state agencies that are claimed to have collected information against these judges, is supposed to originate a petition before the Judicial Service Commission against any of the judges who have been recommended for appointment. And it must be understood from the information that has been filed in court that the grievance that the president claims to have is against serving judges of the High Court who have now been appointed as Court of Appeal judges. The grievance does not relate to any of the 27 nominees who were sourced from private practice. So that if a judge is unsuitable for appointment as a Court of Appeal judge, yet is sitting in the High Court, why is he sitting in the High Court in the first place? But this is what ought to have been done ideally. The president ought to have sworn in all the 41 judges and immediately thereafter ensured that the removal process, which commences with a petition before the Judicial Service Commission, is commenced with those he believes fall below the integrity threshold for a judge.
Mr. Harvey, I'm asking this as a layman, of course, according to our Constitution and our laws, can the President of the Republic of Kenya be jailed?
No, the President of the Republic of Kenya cannot be jailed because for one to be jailed, he or she must face trial, must be convicted, and must be sentenced. The President of the Republic of Kenya is immune from criminal and civil prosecution for the term of his office. But that does not mean that there is no reprieve in the event that the president commits an offense or misconducts himself. No wonder, therefore, the people of Kenya found it prudent to include a clause in the Constitution which gives Parliament the power to try the president. Because when Parliament is conducting a trial of a state officer, it is not limited by the strictures and the procedures that will ordinarily encumber a usual or a customary criminal or civil litigation in court. Because Parliament acts like a court of public opinion. So that the correct forum to try a sitting president is Parliament.
So if indeed you say during the term or the tenure of the president, they have immunity, what happens after? Can these cases follow the individual after they've left office?
Of course, these cases can follow individuals after they have left office. And the history of the world is replete with many of these examples. You remember General Pinochet. You remember General Omar al-Bashir, who is now facing trial for a coup he conducted in the 80s. Just to mention but a few. It must, however, be understood that those countries do not have a transformative constitution as we do, and that will explain the handicaps that they had when those leaders were in office. And for instance, General al-Bashir, who is our neighbor here in Sudan, was invited to attend the promulgation of the Constitution on the 27th of August 2010. And you saw the manner in which he was treated as compared to other international dignitaries who will otherwise be considered more respected than him. But in conclusion on this particular issue, the quality of leadership of a country is representative of the people. As one former American ambassador in Kenya said, choices have consequences. How do we end up with a situation of this kind? Is this something that we can remedy in future? Why do we have a chapter in the Constitution that deals with leadership and integrity? Why do we have an article in the Constitution that has principles of good governance? Are we really enjoying good governance? Is there leadership and integrity amongst our leaders, and in particular, those at the helm of leadership of this country? These are questions that all Kenyans must interrogate seriously, so that as and when we go for an election, we do not end up electing individuals who find the Constitution as an inconvenience. Because if that be the case, then the loser will always be the common wananchi, as it is right now.
You've raised the issue of leadership and integrity and the principles of good governance. I want us to go back to that after some point, but just sticking on the issue of the appointment of these specific judges, we have heard from the former Chief Justice, Dr. Willy Mutunga, and talking about the experience that they had in 2005 of a similar matter, standoff of our appointment of judges, and they had a meeting between himself, the President, and the Speaker of the National Assembly, and this matter was sort of resolved. But he says that from where he observed it, his observation was this was the head of the executive feeling left out in the crucial appointment of judges. And, well, despite the fact that the Attorney General sits in the JSC and there are two other direct nominees of the President who sit in the JSC, but the President feeling that there's some information that he's privy to, that he should be able to use to weigh in on the appointment of judges. What do you say to this? Is this not maybe part of the implementation process of the Constitution, where the two heads of the two institutions are saying, what role do I have to play in this? Am I just a rubber stamp?
Look, the problem we're having with is not one occasioned by a lacuna or a failure of the law to provide for a conducive environment to accommodate the head of state and head of government, insofar as this concern is an issue. Because as you have clearly set out, the President and the executive at large is represented in the Judicial Service Commission, first by the Attorney General, and two, by three appointees of the executive. So that those appointees will have been seized of that information that is claimed to be in the peculiar knowledge of the President. They ought to have interrogated this issue. But more importantly, let's go back to what happened much earlier when a similar problem prevailed. We've been told that the Chief Justice then, the Attorney General, as well as the Speaker of the National Assembly, prevailed upon the President to ensure that the judges were sworn in. And that is a manifestation of the big man syndrome, where a leader wants to be appeased every time an action is undertaken by an arm of government, so that it is said he has a role to play. But anyway, this is Africa, and we are accustomed to appeasing the big man. What have we done? The Chief Justice himself has stated publicly that he has sought an appointment with the President so that they may discuss this issue. On my part, I have sought an appointment with the legal advisor of President Uhuru Kenyatta, the Attorney General, retired Judge Paul Kariuki, and the Solicitor General Kennedy Ogeto. I've even made efforts to contact the President through his other political advisors And they've been adamant they do not want to sit. And if you look at it from that perspective, how can you stretch your hand to shake the other hand that has been folded into a fist? So that the stagnation we have right now is one that has been occasioned by the failure on the part of the president, his advisors, to give momentum to a discussion that will have yielded positive results within the shortest period of time.
So, Nelson, what's really at play here? Because clearly, the Attorney General, who is a senior member of the legal fraternity, former president of the Court of Appeal, knows very well what the law says. The Solicitor General understands what the law says. The president has lived this experience before. And yet, we are not getting this appointment of the 41 judges. What do you think is really at play?
Sorry to say, the way I could categorize this situation is this. We have criminals in public office. They are competing with the public in subverting the rule of law. They are competing with the public in violating the Constitution. There is no other way of explaining it. And then therein lies the problem. Should laws be there for the observance of the people and for the disobedience of the leaders? That is not how governance is supposed to be undertaken. That is not how the social contract is supposed to be performed. And it will be a matter that may surprise you, but the reality is this. The government of the Republic of Kenya does not obey any court orders made by the judiciary. Most of the decisions made by the government of Kenya are challenged in courts of law successfully, and I will put it at about 80% on the success rate, meaning that 80% of what is done by this government is against the Constitution. And these are the people we have entrusted with the responsibility of formulating policy, of implementing the laws that are passed by Parliament. That is, there is a big problem.
Let's take a break on that note. Nelson Harvey is the president of the Law Society of Kenya. He's joining us this morning. We're discussing implementation of the law, adherence and obeying the law and the Constitution, especially looking at the relationship between the judiciary and the other two arms of government, the legislature and the executive. This conversation continues right after this short break, 22 minutes after 8 o'clock. You're on Spice FM and KT and Home, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke, Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. And if you've got any questions or comments to Nelson Harvey, you can post them on our Twitter handle, Spice FM KE, or on Facebook, Spice FM KE, as well as Instagram, Spice FM KE. We'll be back shortly.
We're looking at partly cloudy conditions in Nairobi at 13. We're going to rise to a high of 20 today and a chance of rain later, but it will be cloudy. Nakuru at 13 degrees, partly cloudy throughout today, going to highs of 20 as well. Nyeri, partly cloudy conditions with a chance of rain later. Eldoret, sunny this morning at 13. It'll change later though, but skies will open up into some rain. Partly cloudy conditions in Kisumu and Kakamega, sunny at the moment, but we'll see thunderstorms later. Mombasa 22 degrees and intermittent thunderstorms here and there, and it's likely to be wet throughout until Thursday morning. 24 degrees in Malindi and partly cloudy. Chance of rain here as well. Stepping out to Kenya to look into Kampala, for example. 19 degrees and a chance of rain. Dar es Salaam is a bit foggy, partly cloudy here and there. Highs of 29. And in Joburg, it's 10 degrees and warming up slightly. Chance of rain in South Africa today as the summer is approaching. 26 degrees and rainy conditions in Lagos throughout today. And we'll look back into the skies in a while. Okay, so still a chock-a-block situation on Mombasa Road this morning, and it looks like it's going to be that way for some time because of the two accidents that we've seen further up ahead. It takes us all the way down to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout and Uhuru Highway also as you approach the CBD and getting out. It's going to be a mess, guys. It's a complete mess on the other side as well. Down home towards Outer Ring and those who are trying to access Mombasa Road from that area. Sorry, guys, not happening. And if you can turn now. Joining Outer Ring from Thika Road also is a problem. The road becomes 2 lanes and then it's added to this traffic as well. So all around is where we see it is terrible. The expressway works that are going on also adding to the traffic today, guys. So this one needs some patience. Okay. I don't know what else to tell you. This is what it's looking like. Spice FM KE. That's how you can get in touch with us. Let us know what you see.
It's 25 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM on 94.4 Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Nakuru 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, Nyeri 90.9, and Malindi 97.7. Remember, we live stream the show as well on www.spicefm.co.ke as well as on our social media handles, Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. And the conversation also happens on Instagram, and our account is Spice FM KE. In the room this and every morning, Eric Latif, CT Muga, and Nduoko. And joining us on the line, looking dapper as usual, is the president of the Law Society of Kenya, Nelson Harvey, in a very beautiful office. Nelson, we actually forgot to commend you. This is looking like a very, very nice office. I'd like to come and visit.
Thank you. We could have the next show here.
Well, there you go.
Excellent suggestion.
Indeed, that's a good one. So as we were going into the break, you were telling us, look, we're in a dire situation where we have an executive that is disobeying court orders, that is making resolutions and taking action that is constantly being challenged in court. 80% of those challenges being successful. Besides the political route of seeking reprieve as citizens, and that is going through an impeachment through the National Assembly, what other routes do we have? I mean, for example, what can the Law Society of Kenya do? What can the other institutions or civil society organizations do to ensure that we have a harmonious coexistence between the three arms of government and that we are living in a country governed by the rule of law?
Thank you, Latif, Ndu, and Muga. Can we have a reprieve in court insofar as this matter is concerned? My answer as the servant of the Law Society of Kenya is we have exhausted legal avenues within the courtroom, but we haven't exhausted other options available within the Constitution. And that is why in the month of July, in particular on the 11th of July, the Law Society of Kenya Council passed a resolution to initiate proceedings for the expulsion of the Attorney General and the Solicitor General. This was intended to put pressure on them to bear for misadvising the president not to swear in these judges. But as is often the case, it is said for every 12 people, there'll be one traitor. There was a traitor amongst the judges who, in his wisdom or lack of it, decided to halt this process. Yet this is a process that is given to the Law Society of Kenya under statute. It is a process in which the Attorney General and the Solicitor General will have been heard to explain why, in their view and advice to the President of the Republic of Kenya, these 41 judges should not have been sworn in. As we speak right now, that matter is lying torpid in the courts of law. The Attorney General and the Solicitor General comfortable that they are frustrated, yet another judicial process that will have held them accountable or given progression to this matter. At the same time, the Law Society of Kenya Council has resolved unanimously that a petition be drawn and forwarded to the National Assembly and the Senate for the two houses to initiate and undertake the trial of the President of the Republic of Kenya for his failure to swear in these 41 judges, which amounts to a gross violation of the Constitution. That is what we can do as the two primary steps. There are other lawful means that can be undertaken by the Law Society of Kenya to put pressure to bear on the executive and in particular the President of the Republic. And one of those is what we are undertaking right now. Enlighten the public, informing them as to the cause of their problem, so that every Kenyan, be he or she in Gatundu, Moyale, Kisumu, or Eldoret, that the reason as to why you can't get justice is because of the person you elected to be the chief executive of this country.
So Nelson, if I could just go before you get to that, if I can just ask you, so if you're talking about then enlightening and informing Kenyans about what the problem is, so are you saying then that the appointment of these 41 or the non-appointment of these 41 judges then is just one problem? Is then that there's certain other things that are inherently wrong that need to be dealt with?
Absolutely, yes, do. I will mention just but a few. As we speak right now, we have collected close to 400 orders directed against the government of the Republic of Kenya, state agencies, state officers, and public officers, which have been disobeyed. Many of these are money decrees, and we're speaking about hundreds of billions of Kenyan shillings that the government has refused to pay Mwananchis who have judgments in their favor. What authority can such a government have to continue being in office? You want to be paid taxes by the citizens, yet you are holding billions of shillings that are due to the citizens, yet you are oversighting over maladministration, loss of public funds meant to combat COVID. That is one. Two, we have the failure on the part of the executive to comply with the two-thirds gender rule insofar as public appointments are concerned. Right now, there is a decision of the High Court that states that the cabinet is not gender compliant. We have a decision of the High Court that has found for a fact that Parliament is not two-thirds gender compliant and has directed that the Chief Justice initiates the process of dissolution of Parliament. These, amongst many other visible issues like failed projects, where is the Big Four agenda? Where is the handshake? Where is the BBI? Where is the referendum? There is a call to amend the Constitution. Towards what end? Is the intention to amend the Constitution to tighten the Constitution so that we have good leadership, or is it to loosen? I think it is to loosen. And if you look at it from that panoramic view, you realize the manifest failure of this administration, which the people of Kenya must be made to understand. And perhaps this is the opportune moment for me to make a clarion call to the professionals in Kenya. We have this syndrome. We have this construct we call the silo mentality, where you as a journalist sit in your studio comfortable that you'll have a show of this kind, get your salary at the end of the month without caring why you need to have good governance. Same with the pilots, same with the doctors, same with the teachers, same with the architects. Why is it that it is only us lawyers who are in the forefront of demanding accountability? All these people must participate because they are beneficiaries of good governance. What about the religious leaders? we saw the Catholic Church come out strongly and admonish the administration. Where is the Anglican Church? Where are the Protestant churches? Where are the Muslims? Where are the Hindus? These are people who need to play a fundamental role in shaping the agenda of this country. What about our partners across the border and abroad? What is the European Economic Union doing? What is the East African Community doing? What is the United States of America doing? We saw their great involvement in yesteryears when they held the government of President Daniel Arap Moi to check, when Ambassador Sir Edward Clay lamented wanton corruption in the administration of President Mwai Kibaki, which he equated to vomiting fate. These people have kept quiet.
But which voices are we hearing? I know you campaigned on the platform of A Brave New Bar, where you were painting the picture of the yesteryears where the Law Society of Kenya was robust in not just activism in the courts, but also in activism on matters of governance at all levels. Are we beginning to see that? Because we, so far, with this big one, 41 judges who have not yet been sworn in, and you're saying that from where you sit, you have tried one move, you've tried another move, and all of them are being blocked. So first of all, I'd like to question, is there unanimity within the legal fraternity or the members of the Law Society of Kenya on the kind of action that the Law Society of Kenya should be taking, or the voice that the Law Society of Kenya should be raising, before we even go into the other professional organizations, which I completely agree with you, ISPAC, the AAK, the religious organizations, the Union of Journalists, and all of us should all be speaking about some of these things. But sticking with the Law Society of Kenya, are we seeing a brave new bar, really?
Yes, a brave new bar is now here. The lost glory of the society is back. To answer your question, is there unanimity? I don't think there is unanimity. And it will be turning logic over its head to expect unanimity in a democratic society. But I can say without any fear of contradiction that the position I speak about is one that is held by a majority of the lawyers. The government, of course, has infiltrated the legal profession, including even my council. We have government agencies that work hand in hand with some of my council members. We have moles who work for the NIS within my council, and many other lawyers who are sympathetic of the cause of government. They will always work hard to ensure that they weigh us down so that we do not propel the brave new bar agenda forward. But this is not peculiar to me. It happened to all those leaders of the Law Society who preceded me and had a transformative agenda that was intended to benefit the lawyers who practice in Kenya and also the general public. And it must be understood that for a long period of time in the history of mankind, lawyers have played a fundamental role in ensuring that there is accountability on the part of the government. And the reasons for this are obvious, because first and foremost, the Constitution itself is a legal document. You therefore expect lawyers to be at the forefront of demanding its compliance. All other laws, and the Law Society of Kenya is now given more powers by the act that was put in place in 2014, because we participate a great deal in making appointments to boards, tribunals, and other state agencies. And if you look at it from that angle, you realize why the government will be determined to scuttle the agenda we have in mind. But we are not frustrated because we signed up for this assignment. Like I can tell you for now, you've seen in the social media in the last 2 days, very vehement appraisal by individuals who are clearly state agents pretending to be bloggers, who are keen on pursuing a narrative with the expectation that that narrative will slow me down, will slow my council, will slow a majority of my council and the Law Society from pursuing the agenda of calling for accountability. And you see, what we have been doing is exactly within the mandate that we're given by the statute.
Mr. Habib, there are those who hold the view that under your watch, under your stewardship, the Law Society of Kenya has become an opposition political party. What do you say to these allegations?
I will echo what Reverend Al Sharpton said the other day. We are here for publicity. We are here to make public the grievances of the people of Kenya. And if doing so will equate us to the opposition, so be it. There is no problem. Because as we speak, we don't have an opposition in Kenya. Yet the Constitution contemplated that we have an active opposition. The opposition has been compromised. It has been bought. Parliament has been emasculated. The judiciary itself has been weakened. And if I may be just candid to the three of you, I receive calls. I'm visited every day by a majority of Kenyans, both meek and mighty, who seek that we speak on their behalf because they feel that there is no organ, there is no entity, there is no commission that can advocate for the people of Kenya to ensure that they benefit, to ensure that they get good governance. So that the lamentation that we are in the official opposition is very lame. It's without foundation at all.
So essentially, if I hear you correctly, you appear to be saying that the Law Society under your stewardship seem to be the only organ within the government of Kenya, within the boundaries of Kenya, that are actually fighting for the good of the common man. Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying. And it is my plea to all other professional bodies to see the need to get out of their cocoons, to get out of their silos. Because when a society degenerates, it is the professionals who lose most. And when there is need for the society to change, to advance, it is the professionals who are always on the steering wheel. Because most of these professionals occupy the strata of the middle class. They're the ones that catalyze change. They're the ones that shape opinion. But if they sit back, especially through their leaders, then they leave a vacuum that is filled by hoodlums. You've seen these hoodlums always organizing meetings. And funny enough, most of our elected leaders, appointed leaders, go to the homes of these hoodlums. They're the ones who shape public opinion. How do we end up in such a scenario? Do we really need, as wolves, to be led by sheep?
But do we hear
for a paradigm shift?
Do we hear really a strong voice then from the legal fraternity? If we just look at the implementation of this constitution, there are some gaps in the implementation, some glaring ones. For example, coming up with a formula for the implementation of the two-third gender rule in the National Assembly. Looking at others, looking at how devolution has worked or has not worked, and the rampant and wanton corruption in all the 47 counties at the arms of the national government. Some would argue that we are only hearing the Law Society of Kenya coming out strongly when it's a matter that affects their members, because 41 of their members were to be appointed into levels of the judiciary. These are all lawyers. But when it comes to corruption, what strong action do we see? Not just words, but strong action that we see in the fight against corruption, in bringing out the issues of corruption, or even in prosecuting corruption matters in court. When it comes to the matter of the push and the clamor for the gender equity, we have not had a very strong voice from the legal fraternity. What do you say to that?
Let me dissuade you of this false construct, Latif. It is not that as the leadership of the society, we are concerned with the welfare of our members alone. We participate actively in many facets. For instance, the last of the issues that you enumerated, the two-third gender rule. That matter had been pending before the Chief Justice since 2017. My predecessor had not done anything despite spirited efforts by the women of Kenya beseeching him to intervene on their behalf. When they came to me in the month of July, it did not take me more than a week to ambulate into active action. And I went to see and gave them the wave that brought their agenda to the forefront. As we speak right now, the momentum is high that the Chief Justice must advise the President of the Republic of Kenya to dissolve Parliament. What about corruption? We have been in the forefront of fighting corruption. And it must be understood, corruption is not just about money. Corruption is about skewed public appointments that are propelled by cronyism, ethnicity, and corruption. And these have prevailed in this administration. We've gone to court and successfully obtained orders to stop these appointments. What about the prosecutions? Some of these prosecutions by the DCI, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and the DPP are well-founded, but most of them are weaponized. It is for that reason, therefore, that I've always said where there is an unpopular suspect in court, I will be there to ensure that the scales of justice are balanced. For instance, ask yourself, where is the propriety in the much-hyped prosecution of the DCJ? Yet, we have so many people closely associated with the ruling class who have been involved with credible evidence available in mega graft, but they're not pursued. It's because the war against corruption is targeted, is used for a reason other than the vindication of the rule of law. What about the common Mwananchi? Remember, when the government...
Mr. Harvey, are you saying that those who belong to your profession are outside the boundaries of crime, that it is not possible for any of them to actually have committed a crime, or that all the accusations levied against such individuals are of necessity false?
No, not at all. In fact, there are many of my members who engage in active crime and have resolved with the support of my council and with the support of a majority of my members. And you saw me last week on Tuesday meet up with the Inspector General of National Police. We will deal with these rogue lawyers. We will suspend them, we'll strike them off the roll, and submit them to criminal prosecution. There are no sacred cows here. But what I'm talking about is the selective war insofar as corruption is concerned. You understand? Where certain agencies are used to stifle, to scuttle views of other people. Where Kenya Revenue Authority is unleashed on you when you speak openly, when you call for accountability, where the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is unleashed on you when you take a view that is divergent from what is considered to be a popular view.
Nelson, you brought up the issue of professionals in Kenya coming forward and doing something about what would be the current situation. And I would like to, what exactly do we ask people to do? We talk about having conversations and making sure that the things that you see happening before you are actually overt in terms of awareness. What more can be done to actually bring about any kind of change or any kind of recognition that the people are actually aware of what is going on, beyond speaking about it, beyond being oftentimes in a public arena? What can really be done to bring about any kind of lasting or even evident change?
Many things can be done. Who is the governor of the Higa? A professor of mathematics. Who is the governor of Kakamega? Who is the governor of Pokot? Who is the governor of Kiambu? Who is the governor of Nairobi? You see, as a people, if you don't get actively involved in the choice of leadership, then you'll end up being led by people of substandard quality, both in learning, in their profession, and in their ability to do good. Look at the Congress in the United States of America. Look at the House of Commons in England. It is dominated by professionals, lawyers, pilots, distinguished soldiers, journalists, doctors, engineers. How many of these do we have in the National Assembly? How many of these do we have in the Senate?
Many.
For instance, before the National Assembly right now, there is a bill, the effect of which is to collapse KQ and the Kenya Airports Authority. And there is nobody in the House who has the knowledge of this specialized field. You understand? And look, on our part as lawyers, we've always protected ourselves. We initiated a process to put in place a legal framework that anchors the society into law. And you will find that for that reason, we are recognized under the Constitution and many statutes as a body that must participate in decision-making for posterity and for good governance. What about the other professions? And I've reached out to the leaders of these professions and told them, for instance, the medics, we need to have a composite legislation that takes care of you. They must understand the reason as to why they are fragmented is because the government flourishes in divide and rule. They must come together, and as the law society will provide a platform through which they will express themselves. They will have legislation to make good use of what is available to adequately provide for their members. But more importantly, they must participate in the governance of this country. We must send doctors, pilots, engineers, accountants, and journalists to the National Assembly so that when an issue that is peculiar to that profession is before the House, it's adequately interrogated. Look at the revenue allocation. Why are these people bickering and making noise every day? Because they can't find the formula. The formula is in the Constitution itself. Where are they looking for it? They complain day after day that there is impropriety on the part of appointed leaders, in particular cabinet secretaries. They demand that this resign. Yet the Constitution, under Article 95, Article 5A, gives them the power to oversight these ministers and to remove them. Why? Because we put in office individuals who cannot even read a newspaper. How do you expect them to read and understand the Constitution?
The Constitution and the law of the country. Some of the things that you've put out there are quite heavy stuff, Nelson, talking about the dissolution of Parliament, talking about censure of certain offices, asking for the removal of, the Attorney General and the Solicitor General and things like this. Like I said, heavy stuff. It would be seen that in some sectors, it would be a blowing of hot air. Or is it actually something that is going to come to fruition? And what then?
No. It cannot be a blowing of hot air. Have you seen the bellows that were traditionally used to smelt iron?
I have actually, yes.
Yeah, they were productive. And we're not speaking the realm of conjecture because as I've taken you through this discourse, I've enumerated provisions of law that enable that which we demand of our leaders. And leaders must be held accountable. We may not achieve 100% of what we are required to achieve from this clamor, from these demands we are making. But when history is written, it will be known that it was during the 10 years of this administration that the Constitution was transformed into a paper for wrapping meat, not even wrapping meat, wrapping the intestines of chicken.
Wow. Okay.
Nelson Harvey, very strong words, and thank you very much for speaking to us today. Nelson Harvey is the president of the Law Society of Kenya. He's joined us today to talk about the implementation of the Constitution, the role that the Law Society of Kenya has in oversighting and checking the implementation of this Constitution, and also looking at the appointment of judges. The 41 judges that were to be appointed, I mean, they've already been gone through the entire process with the Judicial Service Commission, but yet to be sworn in because of a standoff between the executive and the judiciary. Asante sana Nelson for speaking to us, and we look forward to another conversation in the near future.
Karibu, next time you come over.
For sure.
Yes,
thank
thank
very
you.
much.
Indeed.
Have a blessed day.
You too.
Thank you.
This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We also want to say thank you very much to our audience on KTN Home who've been joining us since 7 a.m. to now, coming up to 5 minutes to 9. Keep it around on Spice FM, 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, Nyeri, 90.9, and Malindi, 97.7, because we will have more of these conversations in the final hour of the show between 9 o'clock and 10 a.m. The Situation Room broadcasts every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Spice FM. Keep it right here, 5 minutes to 9. All right, 5 minutes to 9. The president of the Law Society of Kenya has spoken to us. You've heard the words of the gentleman saying it's not just hot air, it is useful hot air.
Well, he gave a lot of credit, more credit to himself than to the society that he leads. A lot of it had to do with what he has done.
So this leadership is going to do.
I have featured quite prominently in his conversation.
He's the president.
I understand completely, but it is actually a leadership requirement. It may not be stated so. It may not be documented or inked somewhere in concrete, but the truth of the matter is this. Anytime a leadership position is ascended to, it's against the backdrop of what others prior to you being there have done or probably not done. And it also has to do with the sort of membership you have around you and the people who support your cause. These aren't things you can do on your own. Even if you wake up very early in the morning. No. So.
Well, I think one thing that's clear is that I mean, also alluded to the fact that, there are certain things that are being said now. There are certain things that are being agitated for that we may not see the fruits of such during this government. It's possible that you will see an aligning later as a result of the conversations that are being had now. Like I said, there's some heavy stuff that is being proposed. There are heavy things that are being asked to be done, and it is important to have things like that when you're talking about any government, any democracy, any country that's developing along the lines of governance. However, it is also very important to make sure that it is not talking for the sake of talking. It is not just talking for the sake of any kind of political posterity, but that it is actually meant, especially when it comes to the people and how they will be governed and cared for by the country.
I must say, though, that I am liking what I hear from the LSK now.
Absolutely.
The previous one or two administrations and leaderships of the LSK have been rather quiet and silent in matters such as these. And just to hear that the Law Society of Kenya Council can sit and say, you know what, in order to apply pressure on the president, let's use those who are members of this organization. And let's see, how can we censure the people who should be advising the president on these legal matters? The Attorney General, the Solicitor General, they are members. Let's put pressure on them and such. And then also going to say, we will institute proceedings. And it's a good start. And I only hope that even other organizations, because I believe when you talk about corruption as well, people like the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya should be weighing in on such issues. heavily, because corruption happens. And this profession has auditors, as the accountants. They're the ones who would understand and be able to see what is happening. If we don't hear loudly from ISPAC, if we don't hear loudly from, when we talk about buildings collapsing and all, the associations that are involved in that, the Engineers Board, the Architectural Association of Kenya, all these.
If you don't hear loudly, it's important, because the thing is, if you don't hear loudly, it's almost as though everybody is accepting of the status quo.
But what I would have hoped to hear a little bit more, maybe it's just not just a figment of my imagination, but wishful thinking on my part, is the activities of quiet diplomacy. Because it appears that whenever something has to be brought to the fore, we seem to expect it to be brought with loud noises and an acrimonious language. Whereas I believe that what one is actually gunning for here is change. So even as one threatens, even as one holds a sword over the heads of some of their members, the conversation about quiet diplomacy, all I heard was, we have tried to get hold of the president. That's not quiet diplomacy. That's seeking an appointment. Quiet diplomacy involves the very things they're saying, the very people they're talking about and whom they want to impeach or sack or remove from the role.
But quiet diplomacy also involves seeking audience. And if you've sought audience with the Attorney General, with the Solicitor General, you're not getting that audience.
You're not getting this, then you take the next
How
step.
is that quiet diplomacy going to happen?
No.
Anyway, let's take a break. It's top of the hour. Let's see what's happening on the roads. Good morning. It's now 9 o'clock.
Guys, today, I don't even know how I will tell you that if you can avoid Mombasa Road, please do. Or if you're headed in that direction, it just means that you're not going to be able to move as smoothly as you normally would, because it's still drama, guys. Okay, and also it's happening on Bagavi Way, whereby there's a stalled vehicle. It's a stalled vehicle morning. It has happened there as well, so it's not moving as quickly as you'd like. So this is affecting traffic all the way to the T-Mall roundabout and then on to Langata Road in both directions, actually, because of this. Slow moving traffic on Wayaki Way as well, trying to get into the city. Today is that day. If you're wondering when it's going to happen, it was today. I'm getting off Thika Road. It's been called the Devil's Playground, Mombasa Road. I thought that was funny. So the devil is having some fun there today, unfortunately, to our disadvantage. Okay, so we're not being able to move as much as we'd like. There's some pockets where it's not so bad, but patience is what is needed this morning on the roads. You get stuck somewhere, you find an alternative, which is what people need today. Let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Two and a half minutes after 9. CT Muga, the grave digger, and their intentions.
Once upon a time,
in a land far, far away. Okay.
yes, there was someone who dug a grave for an enemy, not knowing that indeed he was digging a grave for himself. He that digs a grave for an enemy may very well be digging it for himself or for themselves. Yes.
That is today's proverb. Before we went to the traffic break, you were talking about quiet diplomacy.
What I was saying was this. If you are purposed and focused on actually finding a solution, you will try literally almost anything. The fact that you have attempted to talk to the Attorney General or the Solicitor General and you're not able to, it doesn't mean that you are the person who must talk to them. Remember, we had this discussion when we had in our studio someone who represents the youth very, very vociferously. A lady by whose surname is Wako. And she, among the things she said was that the youth are not listened to. And I posed the question, it's along the same line. Must you be the one who voices it, or can you have someone voicing the same thing for you? It's a question of, do you want an effect or do you want results? The Attorney General has friends, has people. It's the same argument we use when we're talking about doctors and the influence that they have, and saying, telling us about they've had this petition, they've had this discussion, and they've had to say, wait, there's the element of lobbying. You are doctors, after all. There are very few. It is not possible to get a group of people who are as influential as doctors, simply because they deal with people's lives. Now, if you are willing to engage in lateral thinking, you will find a way around this particular problem. That's what I'm saying. The threats, good. The arm twisting, okay, it works. But the quiet diplomacy, as you know it, if it isn't working, look for another avenue. Because one is clearly not working. It's obvious. Yes. And there must be reasons why it isn't working.
Yeah, some of those reasons may just be as unreasonable as you could imagine.
I agree.
That, the person is just not interested. So, for instance, remember when we were speaking to the current chief officer of health in the Nairobi Metropolitan, who was then the Secretary General of the Union of Doctors. And he was saying, right, so we're trying both sides. So there's a side of diplomacy. But at the same time, so that diplomacy works, you need to apply pressure.
A little pressure, yes.
So that pressure then forces somebody to say, all right, okay, so what do these guys want? What do you want? Can we arrive at a solution?
Meaning provide them with an escape clause so that at least you mitigate against the embarrassment and the fallout that may arise.
But looking at the same thing that is happening with the judiciary, several times the Chief Justice has said, I have tried to seek direct audience with the president. I have tried to send emissaries to his emissaries. And when those emissaries come back, they're like, we have hit a dead end. So both the press conferences, both the direct meetings, both including even the indirect sending of emissaries, hitting a dead end.
So
Law Society of Kenya is also telling us the same thing. So we are applying pressure, making statements, demanding, going to court, sitting as a council and saying we'd like to, have censure these two individuals. But at the same time, we are sending friends of these people to them.
You see,
and
Eric,
telling them, look, you're our member. Can you just
do this?
You see, what I'm hearing is this. We initiate a certain process and we expect success. Now we don't get success. So here we are lamenting about our not getting the success.
It's part of pressure.
Yes, and I'm saying this. If it doesn't work, twist it. If the twist doesn't work, hoist it. If the hoisting doesn't work, dig a tunnel. All I'm saying is, if your intention is to ensure that this thing which you tout as being wonderful and good needs to see the light of day, don't stop trying.
Keep at it.
Let's see you trying and trying and trying, not telling us, we've tried. Because then you're telling us, I have tried and it appears like I'm not going anywhere. And I'm saying, really? Have you exhausted the width and breadth of your imagination?
Although, to be fair, City, that's not what Nelson said. He didn't sound like he was saying we have reached the end.
No, he doesn't.
He was basically saying...
He doesn't. The CJ did. The Chief Justice did. Sounded like, I have,
trying.
Yes.
And it's because I think what he said is clear that, this one avenue we have tried, and what you hear us saying now is because we've tried other ways and it has not worked, and that is why we decided to take the direction that we are taking now. And it's, from where they're going, we're hoping it will bear fruit. And you see the resolve, and you hear and understand that, look, it's not about giving up at some point, but that is we're going to keep trying. Everything that we can possibly do, we will do, for as long as we continue to have breath, kind of thing. And this is one thing that I have been saying is that if you demand any kind of change and the things that you've tried at some point don't work, that is why you see things get to the place where they have been in other countries in the world like Lebanon, for example, or Chile, where people have said, you know what, we've tried having a decent, open, and honest conversation about these things and urging you to do something about governance in this country. And we have seen that it has not worked. We've tried to have conversations. In Lebanon, for example, we have sent our professionals to you. We've had this conversation. They have been compromised. So guess what? We're going to do something then that is going to not just have you take notice, but is going to have the rest of the world take notice. And we're going to sit here until you decide to do something about it. And the resolve is that they will stay there until you listen and have a conversation about it.
There's a comment that I've seen on Twitter, and the lady is saying that she was in Form 1 when we were promulgating the Constitution. She's 24 years now, and one thing that she's learned just from observing leaders, including the President Nelson Harvey, is that they always find someone to throw blame to when they don't do their job. Watch and learn. That it's always because of somebody else's fault that these things have not happened. At no point do our leaders take personal responsibility and say, I have failed.
You know, this issue of trying and trying, if you look at, for instance, the unease that the Middle East has had for a very long time, one of the things that happened and that shook the world was when Anwar Sadat, the then Egyptian president, decided to sign a peace accord with his counterpart in Israel. Hey! It was earth-shaking. He had moved away from what was considered the norm.
Yep.
If you read his biography, one of the things that he mentions was that he had understood that this was necessary, but he had waited for a time when there would be a strong leader in place. Someone whom, apart from making an agreement with, would be able to hold their end of the bargain. Because having an agreement and someone doesn't hold their end doesn't make sense. Now, on August, this particular year, 2020, something similar happened with Israel and the Emirates. Again, they moved from the norm. Now, this cannot have happened, it couldn't have happened if people had not just continuously worked at it. You talk about Lebanon. The changes that have brought Lebanon to where it is, positive and negative, began around 1975. Prior to that, it was a complete constant, things fell apart, there was a war zone, and they came to understand and say, folks, everyone here needs to work together. So they formed a government that was considered inclusive. What had not been foreseen was that these fellows would just consider themselves inclusive
And
against the others.
and not the people who sent them there.
Yes.
Right.
Okay? So now what they have inadvertently brought into being is that the very differences that have existed in this society have been put aside. And this we've said on this particular station many times, and you have brought it up. Everyone is on the same page. These guys must go. Everyone. The rich have their complaint, the poor have their complaint. Everybody.
It's not about religion.
No,
it's not about
no.
it's not about dynasty, as we've talked about. It's nothing to do with that. But saying, you know what, we've got to get this country to where it was before. Because guess what? We are actually tired. And that sentiment ran from rich to poor.
Yes.
From Christian to Muslim, which are the two dominant religions in the country. It ran across and said, you know what, it's enough. So much so that when things basically imploded, literally imploded a couple of weeks ago, they said, you know what, this is a result. Literally, things have actually imploded now. And this is what we've been talking about.
And it's you who have brought it about.
And you have actually brought this about. And the things we're talking about is not some fiction of your imagination. We are seeing it literally happening now. And the ministers in government actually had to look around and say, you know what? You're right. We're not doing this now. Let's leave. It's not the solution, but it got people
It's a step in the right direction.
Exactly. It's not going to give you the result that you're looking for right now.
It's a beginning.
But it's a beginning. And what has that been? It has been a constant and consistent agitation by the people to say we will not settle for less. But it was not a snap of the fingers that got them there. It was trying and being rejected, trying and being ignored, trying and then even being beaten, assaulted and murdered. It was all of that. But the resolve was much stronger than the temporary emotion or temporary pain that they felt. The resolve was to see a country that got back on its feet, that had been on its knees for 20 odd years. And I'm saying, until you get to that point, then be ready to accept whatever is happening.
The process, becomes clear the process of trying to attain lasting change is not for the faint-hearted.
No, it isn't. It really is not. It's not, okay, we feel it today, and okay, I have this feeling that, yes, I want a country, and I can put my hand on my chest and it beats, and I say, no, it's got to be a lot more than, it has to be a lot more than that. Unless you really don't want it, then,
If you look at our constitution and what we eventually accepted as the tool that would be promulgated, that story we know. But the story that is really interesting is what else happened, what else was happening, the compromises that were made, because compromises were made. How did we end up once again in the presidential system, and yet we had said we wanted a parliamentary system? Again today, talking to Mr. Charles Nyachae, should we call him Justice Charles Nyachae, what becomes apparent is that Chapter 6, as we currently have it, was not the Chapter 6 that had been proposed. It was tweaked downwards. Because people felt the one that had been proposed was for angels, not for human beings. According to Kenyan Speak, what it means was the standards were high and they were thinking, goodness gracious me. If this is applied, goodness, higher, who will escape this particular dragnet?
So who are you going to elect?
Yes, exactly. And we all sort of like fall into the category of people whose by their very existence will probably go against the spirit and the law of what you are suggesting. So the reality is we have a constitution, and even as we speak, this constitution doesn't favor certain people. And unfortunately for the citizens of Kenya, among the people it doesn't favor people who actually are in powerful positions within the country.
Yep.
Yes.
So they will take a lot of effort to claw back on some of the gains and provisions of this constitution.
Yes.
So when you talk about now, let's have a conversation about amending the constitution and the vigilance that's being called out by all these other people that we are speaking about. It's to ensure that the political class does not hijack our moment.
Yes.
Because they will introduce other things that are now going to favor them, and yet what we wrote as a constitution was not favoring this particular individual and this particular class of people. Well, let's look at what's happening on the weather-wise at this hour at 9:15. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, 0719-012-600. We'd love for you to join the conversation now. Good morning.
It's 17 degrees and still mostly cloudy in Nairobi. Partly cloudy conditions going to follow throughout today. Highs of 25 and lows of 11. Nyeri is mostly sunny this morning. It's going to continue like this throughout, going to highs of 23. 17 degrees and sunny conditions in Nakuru, but it's going to change later to rain conditions, highs of 24 and lows of 11. Eldoret is mostly sunny at 16. Go to highs of 22. In the afternoon is bringing in the rain clouds. And in Kisumu today, sunny conditions at 22 will rise to highs of 29 and lows of 18. Partly cloudy conditions in the afternoon. It's clear in Kakamega at the moment. It's going to change later though. Highs of 26 and lows of 15 with rains coming in the afternoon. Partly cloudy in Mombasa, 26 degrees and intermittent rains, highs of 28. In Malindi today, it's partly cloudy this morning. 27 degrees. The sun will come out at some point and go to a high of 28. In Kampala, it's sunny conditions at 22. It'll change later though as the heavens open up into rain with highs of 26 and lows of 18. In Dar es Salaam this morning, it's partly cloudy at 25 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 21 with a chance of rain later on. In Johannesburg today, it's mostly cloudy at 9 degrees, going to a high of 17. It'll be a cloudy afternoon coming down to a low of 8. Let's take a look into Lagos, where it's partly cloudy at 25, and the showers will come in later with highs of 29 and lows of 24. We'll take a last look into Europe. And in London, it's 11 degrees and sunny conditions, going to a high of 22 and partly cloudy conditions in the afternoon. Paris, clear skies at 12 degrees. Sunny conditions all through today with highs of 22. It's cooling down some, coming down to lows of 12. And getting into Wednesday morning in New York with scattered showers. This will be the order of the day throughout the day, going to highs of 28 and lows of 22.
All right, 18 minutes after 9, the conversation continues, and we want you to join the conversation on 0719-012-600. We have spoken today to Charles Nyachae, who was the chairman of the Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution, and Nelson Harvey, who is the president of the Law Society of Kenya, looking at various aspects of the implementation of this constitution. Charles Nyachae cautioned, and he said, look, if we are not vigilant, then there are several cadres of human beings in this society who intended to hijack this process, who were not very comfortable with the kind of constitution that had been proposed, that was passed by the people. And so they are clearly now starting to become more and more forceful and loud in the way in which they're trying to claw back on the gains of this particular constitution. And he says, if we're not careful, will be overtaken, will be overrun by this particular cadre of people.
I mean, isn't it already happening?
That's what he's saying.
Yeah, it's already happening. So, I mean, it almost would be kind of like a deflating mechanism to people who really want to see, even that section of the society and population of Kenya, who want to see a constitution that has in its spirit and letter that is actually going to work for the people. But then you see that it is all an exercise in futility if it will not actually come to be. If there are people in positions who have the opportunity and power to manipulate the process, then what exactly is happening for the people? And that's the thing, to be able to call out things like that. How often is the conversation that the Constitution is not being implemented, or there's certain things that are stopping it? And the things that are stopping it are actually individuals who want to scuttle the process because they see that they will not be gainers if this thing actually came to light.
You see, there are several categories. There's a category of the politician, whether it's a senator or a member of parliament, who is unfortunately said to be aligned to the president or the government. Starts there. Then there is this category of civil servant, who is also alleged to have powers beyond the dictates of the office. Then there's the really ominous ones, the third category, individuals who are faceless, nameless, and who always seem to be behind the machinations that involve wrongdoings that end up giving the citizens of this country the short end of the stick.
I know you want to say it, CT. Go ahead.
No.
Those two words, let it out.
I've said it.
What two words?
Those ones. This group of people who are unseen, faceless, but seem to run things in the country. Come on.
I've said it. Those people. I've said it.
Okay.
See, I have to practice what I preach. Yes. Soft diplomacy.
This is So how do we save ourselves from this category of people? If, for example, we look at the conversation around the referendum now and the BBI, and what has been touted, what Charles Nyachae said, he's choosing not to listen to what is being said as bar talk, but waiting for the actual proposals. But just going with the conversation up in the air, the bar talk, so to speak, is we're going to want to amend the Constitution because there's some things that really are not helping us in building cohesion as a nation. And therefore we need to change one or two things so we can better move forward. Our lived experience is showing us that, we need to change these things. Is this a politician-led conversation, or is this a citizen-led conversation? And who should lead this conversation?
Bring in a third category of people. The faceless individuals that I mentioned, who often go under the name of cabal or cartel. Okay, they are a rather influential group of people, and they cannot be left out of this particular conversation. And you see, the thing about them that perhaps makes them easy to understand, for them they're not really political. Politics is a tool that they use. Their interest is money.
It's money. Bottom line.
Yes.
Bottom line is money.
And how much of it can be made, really. So you could even argue that they are amoral. It's not right or wrong.
Yeah.
And at some level, it doesn't really matter who they work with.
They just are.
Yes, exactly, because their focus is different.
Yeah.
But the question is, what sort of environment have we allowed to develop and grow in which such a group of people can thrive? Because they thrive. When we read about a presidential decree being ignored completely, what on earth does that tell you?
So what appears clear to me then, it's not who is involved, it's who is not benefiting from this. If the Constitution is supposed to be or a decision of we the people, then it really is not a decision of we the people. It really then is not for the benefit of us, the people, you, the Kenyans. It isn't. It is about people who are manipulating or scuttling the process to make sure that it is beneficial unto them as a small group, because this thing we're talking about is less than 0.5% of the people of this country who are essentially benefiting from scuttling a process or not allowing it to live out its spirit then for the development or the benefit of the people. So it is clear, what is clear is that there might be people who are manipulating the system or whatever. But it is very clear that the people of Kenya are not benefiting then from the complete and authentic implementation of such laws.
The tools of implementation of such schemes is usually the Kenya shilling. And the more, the better. So when you see a fight, it is a fight that legally, constitutionally might prevent them from making more of this. And so they need more to be able to arm themselves to influence processes and individuals so that whatever they want to achieve is achieved.
Yeah.
And that goes as far as even who gets elected. And why it's a real problem is that we're talking about something that has pervaded even our political parties. It isn't a question of what you think you can bring to the political party in terms of your expertise, your ability to money.
It's a pesa.
And you know, the thing is that I think about Kenya and I think about other countries on the continent and how this has been is that the thing that happens in Kenya is that it happens in a very silent, non-overt manner. Nobody is in your face basically telling you that I am going to do what I want to do regardless of how you feel. No. It's quiet. It's silent. You really have no idea what has happened.
You're throwing the words development.
You'll say things to make people feel like something is going on.
And you say this in a church forum.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Where
so
you're
people
going to
think
give
that
harambe.
holier than thou attitude, everything is okay. It's silent, but the way in which it has happened has been deadly. And I will go to my neck of the woods in Nigeria where it's a gregarious, open, everybody knows that this person is stealing. It's not even a secret, right? We're going to scuttle the process of the Constitution, and now we'll do it as we like. It's open. It's clear. Everybody knows what's going on. You shout, if you want to shout from here to tomorrow, that's your problem. But here,
I'm louder than you.
Here, you wouldn't really have touted Kenya, for example, as you would have individuals in government who may want to scuttle the process, because everybody is very prim and proper, and whatever is going on is not out in the open. You would never know.
We have institutionalized a duplicitous nature.
You would never know.
Which allows us to be as hypocritical as hell. Well, hell actually isn't hypocritical. Hell is fairly straightforward. If you believe and understand it, it's...
But in terms of measure, we get
Yes,
it.
exactly. Yeah. So if you simply consider how it is that, and you follow the conversations of, say, political leadership and those who are associated with them, over time, the things they say and the twisting and turning and changing, they never actually have a position, not really, except that which will benefit them.
You know what? My father once said to me, he said, you know, that kind of politics that you see that like is happening here in Kenya is you can akin to a rat at night that bites your foot, but then immediately blows on it so that you don't feel the pain of what is going on. And by the time you wake up, half your foot is gone. Whereas in other parts, it will bite you and actually tap you and wake you up and tell you, look, I'm actually biting your foot. So in this case, what I see happening here in Kenya is the rat is biting your foot, blowing on it, and you really don't know what's going on. And by the time you have woken up,
you to sleep.
soothing you, but taking away from you properly until you're unable
But
to
you
walk.
know that mechanism works because it has within it a certain unit that deals with promise, expectation. Now, the expectation is considered to be good because if you have money, then you can do things. And there are individuals who will claim that they have seen the benefits. There are communities who will say they have seen the benefits of these things.
Yeah.
Now, benefits differ from community to community, but there is always the aspiration that if I get within certain circles, I may also reap some of these benefits. Now, remember, the issue of morality went out of the window a heck of a long time ago. It doesn't feature. In fact, the morality here is the person who is preventing you from reaching this promised land is the person who is wrong.
Yeah.
This is the person who must be dealt with because they are actually preventing development. These are the people who are ensuring that we remain behind. These are people who are ensuring that we are marginalized. See how that language comes in?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, what I've always found interesting is people making these speeches, every time I look at them, they seem to be very well fed. They seem to be people who have balance.
They don't have a problem
Yes.
in terms of
So
your daily
But
bread.
they represent people whom they claim to be marginalized.
Of course.
Now, that having been said, this really is the heart of the matter. The citizenry has to decide. You can continue being sat on, or you can determine to voice your displeasure. It is your right to voice it and say, we don't like this.
There's something that Charles Nyachae said, which is about civic education. So civic education, attempts to civic education happened in the run-up to the referendum in 2010. Post the Constitution, there has been zero attempt at civic education.
No.
But then, would you say that the people who were aware of the Constitution, were aware of what they were voting for twice within 5 years? In 2005, they went for a referendum. In 2010, they went for a referendum. 2 decades of really having the conversation dominating the airwaves about the Constitution. Would you say that that population is not aware of the Constitution that they voted for?
I believe they are. Eric.
That when we came to 2011, that the citizens were really not aware of the Constitution?
You see, awareness is at different levels, if you ask me. And there's something Mr. Nyachae said, Justice Nyachae said, which to me was actually pertinent to this discussion, and that is, it's not so much the issue of awareness. No, they're aware, but the greater awareness was that they wanted change. Now, the form in which this change was actually going to manifest itself is probably the subject of our discussion.
That's where
now.
the issue is.
Yes.
All right, so let's take a look at what's happening on the roads and continue this conversation. And we'd like to hear what you think of this. Kireki Kingston on Twitter says, we all need to see things from the aperture of Harvey's lenses, because only then can change happen in this country. Most of the middle class society in this country remain silent when the law is being mutilated left, right, and center by the executive. It's all about the vigilance again and understanding what is happening, and what Mr. Charles Nyachae said is about empowerment of the citizenry. Good morning, 9:30. Let's see what's happening on the roads. This conversation continues.
Mombasa Road still don't jam. I don't know what else to say, man. That's what it looks like. Around the city, don't jam. Don't jam. Mombasa Road today. It's terrible. Honestly, I not fit talking for English again.
It is that sort of jam, is it?
Jam, don't jam Mombasa Road. If you want carry go outside, outer ring, don't jam.
Okay.
You know they move.
All right.
Carry reach Nyayo Stadium, don't jam again.
Okay.
Today, your eye go clear. Where?
Okay. Man, I'm actually learning Nigerian.
Where?
Well, you see, me, I've got that one. Which means the Don Jam has gone where?
And where is different from Nyeri.
Yes, it is very different. But they may be related for all we know.
Oh, yeah.
No get where you they go today. If to say you no wake for morning, omo, now for road you go sleep.
See, almost come into the conversation.
Omo, is you guy my guy. I be waiting in the column.
Maze?
Omo.
Mazi. 27 minutes to 10 o'clock. So I want to bring that conversation again on the issue of the citizen and the role of the citizen, the role and the responsibility of the citizen in the implementation of this constitution, in remaining vigilant. So yes, Justice Charles Nyachae told us that, in his opinion, the citizen is not adequately empowered to remain vigilant on the implementation process. So the citizen really does not understand to great length or depth how much power they have on implementation of the Constitution, on ensuring that what was intended by this Constitution is actually achieved and realized. And I just want to ask again, is that the case? Is it that the citizen does not know? For example, when you talk about this chapter 6 of the Constitution, yes, it was mutilated by the political class. And when it came now to the enactment of the act that supports this chapter, that was sort of, made loose or weak in terms of saying, so what is it that the EACC is going to look at? The EACC, and we were told this by Kagushi of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, he said, what you're supposed to check is, do you have any ongoing trial in court? No? Tick. All right. Have you ever been jailed? Indicate. That's all that they're supposed to do. And take that to the IEBC, and then IEBC will look and see, all right, this person has gotten a green light to be a candidate, and so we pass them as a candidate. But you, the people, know this person. You, the people, know the person because they are your neighbors in the village. They're your neighbors in your neighborhood, and they are coming to seek your vote. And you look at them and you know their conduct, you know whether they have integrity or not. But you are like, okay, because ako kwa list, wacha tu nitampigia kura. Is that
Eric, have you considered perhaps that one of the things that influences the action or the state of being that you've described is that the majority of Kenyans don't actually believe that this constitution and the rights therein actually applies to them. That yes, it works for other people, definitely, but they are not among the people for whom it works. Meaning they have accepted that we have a disparity in our society, and they've also accepted it's like the situation that I'm in is actually where I am, and because of this, I do not have certain rights. Yes, you keep talking about it, but I actually don't have those rights. No, other people have them. Now, if someone believes that they don't have the rights, it doesn't really matter what you do. Their activity is not even hampered. It's shackled right from the get-go.
So you accept this is my station and this is why
more or less you'll go with the flow.
This is what I'm entitled to in my station.
Yes. So I'm not doing badly. I mean, a little suffering is necessary for me. A little hardship, a little hunger from time to time. Now it's when people say I don't have to stay hungry, and this doesn't have to be my lot.
Yeah.
Now, people around the country have said that vis-a-vis education in an earlier time and in the current time, understanding that the pursuit of it and the achievement of it would help bring about a change in your life. That is now an example of the refusal saying, no, there's an avenue here, I will continue pursuing this avenue until I get to where I want. Because this is an opportunity that's opened to me. Now, the unfortunate thing is now, when you have a situation like the one we have with the unemployment rate rising, and unfortunately our education is tied in, is joined at the hip with the expectation of employment, then suddenly that interest also now begins to get a beating.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that then that is an opportunity to give up. No. But how do you get this message across? Because really, people will succumb and they will go by their lived experience. We can say all these things, and you say it, but they're thinking, yeah, we've heard what you've said, but you know something. What we see here is this, and it trumps what you're saying.
So, but what's the need for the population?
Okay, this Nini being what exactly?
The Nini, Kirea.
Even better. Okay.
That one. That one for the people.
For the citizens.
Actually, there is light. And in fact, there's a great deal of very white, bright light at the end of this particular tunnel. You see, it's not just a question of power in numbers, but and power in resolve. But it begins with not understanding, but internalizing this simple reality. You know, I'm talking about the common monanchi. Why don't I even talk about the so-called middle-class individual? Many of them didn't begin in the middle class. They didn't inherit it. It didn't come by way of birth that their parents were middle class, and as a result of that, they have worked and gotten that position. But you'll still find they're still hampered by the very same things that I'm saying. There are things that they feel, this one actually is not really for me. They more or less determine this is not something I can do.
But I think that a lot of people still don't. Because, again, we've talked about the process of agitation to getting a better way of doing things in the country is not a comfortable one. It is not comfortable. And the majority of people don't want to be in an uncomfortable situation. It takes time, it takes effort. You're just generally, out of where you would want to be, out of your comfort zone, essentially. And that's the thing. To push for any kind of agitation, you're under the spotlight all the time. People are listening to you and calling you a naysayer. People are saying that, you are insisting on taking this hard stance to making change. But that's the thing. Any kind of change worth having is going to put you through a process that is uncomfortable. And I think that's the problem. People can understand what needs to be done to bring about that change. Because when you're asking, so what is in it for the people? If there's a small percentage of people who are benefiting from this, what about the larger majority of people who clearly have to do something about the situation, because that small percentage who rules or who governs is not going to?
Let me ask you.
But the reason why a lot of people don't want to go into the process of agitation is because it is not comfortable. The people who sat in the streets in Lebanon, who continue to sit in the streets of Lebanon, of course they want to be at home sleeping. The people who sat or protested in the streets of Chile before they got a referendum that amended the constitution some 9 months later, it wasn't comfortable for them. They walked to work for months. They protested in the streets. They lived without lights and water. They did it. It was not comfortable. But at least there was a change and something happened. And that's the thing. I think quite a number of people are not ready to go into that state where it is uncomfortable when you're demanding for change. I mean, some of the things that he said, what is he going to be? He'll be persona non grata for some time.
Quickly.
But is it worth it for the step? Absolutely.
For example, Patriarch Sir Shujaa says on Twitter, the risks attached to voicing our grievances are what prevent most of the citizens to participate in demonstrations and marches. Police actually instructed to hurt and discourage this very right to protest. But you see, the clamor for a new constitution is actually full of stories of protests. The clamor for multipartyism is full of stories for protests, about protests. This has happened before in this country. It's not that it has not happened. Even this clamor for the handshake is as a result of protests. People woke up day 1, day 2, day 3. People participated in protests of one form or the other, boycotting of products as asked by leaders, contributing to some pay bill numbers. All this, people have actually taken this. But maybe the issue goes back into, yes, there's protesting, but also there's understanding that this is your role and your responsibility. There's also understanding that what I am seeing, I have an avenue. I have an avenue of correcting this. I have a way of correcting this. When Nelson Harvey said, look, we need to question ourselves, who is it that we elect? We need to question ourselves. When he talks about parliament being emasculated, how can a parliament that has been elected, how can 300 plus members of a national assembly be emasculated by an executive? Why? Is it because they don't have a backbone? Is it because they don't have a leg to stand on? Is it because they don't feel that they are legitimately occupying those seats?
Or remember why they went there in the first place?
Yep. Is it because that they feel beholden to the head of the executive and they know that I was elected because I aligned myself to this person?
And remember, the head of our executive also happens to be the head of a party that has a majority
in that house.
Yes.
And the handshake brother happens to be the leader of the party that has the second highest number in that house. So if those two say this and the other, can you really tell me that a certain elected member of parliament feels that they are not answerable to the people who voted for them, but to the person who is heading a party that sponsored them to parliament?
Actually, now that you mention it, why don't you just take a little peek at what's happening in the case of the county governor of Migori? The party.
Summoned them to Nairobi.
Party.
Not actually, the party went to Migori. The party asked MCAs, come
here.
And the end of their deliberation was that impeach. Party. It's a first in many, many fronts. All right? Party. Our parties are powerful tools in this country. Now, if we were to understand just that little point and then, should we say, put it alongside, juxtapose it with the general understanding of the role that our political leadership have vis-a-vis their self-interest, then it becomes apparent what will be done. Because if someone is in power, and the CEO of the country, who is the president, is in power, someone who is close to him will also have power by virtue of that association. So this isn't someone you are going to toy with.
No.
Yes. And yet the individuals within our government setup who appear to toy with presidential directives, which makes me ask the question, were these directives given just so that they can be given, or were they given so that they could be followed?
Were the directives actually given? Or was it a public pronouncement?
That actually now is the heart of the matter, isn't it?
I could say something. It's reported, but
the documentation that makes it legal.
Nothing.
I could say something to keep everybody busy who has their eyes on me for some time. And, you be busy with that as you mull over it and chew it out. By the time you're doing that and spitting it out, we would have moved on to something else. Very possible.
Yes.
Very, very possible.
Now, that we're having this very discussion and we're discussing this very point gets to the heart of the matter, Eric, because everyone whom we refer to as a Mwananchi is an observer of all these things.
Yeah.
These things play out in the public domain. And one of the things that the Mwananchi does, they discuss these things among themselves at great length.
Yep.
In pockets. And then when you throw in social media, my friend, people come to conclusions that you may not know about, but they have looked at this matter and they have accepted that the general position that they are going to take as their group or whatever is this. So the next time they approach this matter, they're approaching it from a certain firmly held view. Yes.
Exactly. I mean, it's clear that, it's clear that something has got to give at some point. I think it just needs to be, because we talked about agitation has happened, protests have happened that have gotten to the country to the point where it is now. Because it's not a clarion call for people to down their tools and rush into the streets and start protesting. That's not what I'm saying. But it's clear that there have been certain levels of agitation for certain things to happen. The Constitution itself, before it led to promulgation, it's a product of people having said over time, we cannot continue in this manner, and that's why you see. Granted, it's not that the reins were loosened completely to the point whereby you protest, you get what you want. That has not happened. But it's got to be, things have got to give where it gets to the point that common people, professionals, whomever, should be able to speak out over something that they see is not working, and the powers that be able to sit up and listen and are aware of what the heartbeat of the people actually is. That's the way it's got to be.
I've opened up the phone lines and calls have come in thick and fast. Philip in Laikipia, let's start with you. Good morning, Philip.
Morning, Eric.
How are you?
I'm fine. How is Hindu and City?
Good, thank you,
We're
Philip.
all good, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, this is Philip from Laikipia. Are you okay?
Yes, let's hear from you.
Having listened to that conversation with Charles Nyachae and his learned friend Nelson Harvey, I actually can say this.
Yes.
I think the CIC actually failed to do what it was what it was meant to do. Because having listened to you even listened to Nyachae, he was just like he had something to say, but maybe out of fear or what I cannot describe, he couldn't come clear. And I also want to tell the president of the Law Society of Kenya, Mr. Nelson Havi, he should actually, the Law Society of Kenya need to act as a mediator between the judiciary and the executive. And let's not say that the Republic of Kenya doesn't comply with any court order. You see, the executive is not the republic. Is not the executive are individuals.
Yeah.
But actually, in a way, they represent Kenyans. But they are not. They don't carry the whole Kenyans' mind. You see.
Yeah.
So the Law Society of Kenya need to act like as a mediator between the executive and the judiciary.
Thank you.
So that's
Good
what
point.
I can actually tell them. Yeah.
Good point.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. I have Brian and John on hold, but let's first go to Alan in Nairobi. Good morning, Alan.
Good morning, old chap.
How are you doing?
I'm all right.
Alan, now
First
when you say
point.
chap only to Eric, no.
Old lady, how you doing, ma'am?
I'm an old lady.
Ma'am, how you doing, ma'am?
I'm pulling your. Don't worry.
You asked
just
for it.
go ahead.
You asked for it.
My first point, we should accept that in a society like ours,
Yep.
change can only be elite-driven. What we call a vanguard. So this obsession with where is the small man we are making these changes is in a sense not very correct. Major changes in society will always be led by a vanguard. The second point, I think as a country, one of the biggest mistakes we made was to give too much talk time and space to lawyers, like the way they were arguing this morning. Law teaches you to argue in absolutes and teaches you to argue in circles.
In abstract.
That's why we don't see the problem with the current constitution. From an economic standpoint, my brother and sister, this thing is a total mess. We did not need 400, 300 MPs and senators and all these corrupt MCAs all over the place.
Yeah.
We ran away from a system that we had a very strong central civil service. Today, the public sector is in a total mess. My last point, the reason I agree with the BBI, the political elite in this country is a disorganized group that cannot even think about their own interests in a long-term way. That's why you find guys who are opposing this thing at this side, and today, right?
Yeah.
So the moment they give you a chance to grab something in terms of reform, just grab it. From this BBI, you can grab something. So we should not. The Constitution as it is, we should not assume that it's good. There are things. It must be a continuous process of miss and hit.
Sawa.
And that's why the BBI opens for us an opportunity to get something that's good out of it. We pick it up.
Thank you, Alan. Let's hear from Brian in Nakuru. Good morning, Brian.
Morning, guys.
Good morning.
Okay. The issue with the new constitution is as simple as this. Have you seen how new believers, new converts, the new believers, when are born again, the next day when they wake up, they wonder, what next? What should I? Should I pretend being good or what?
Oh, we lost him. So he says someone gets saved today and then tomorrow they wonder, all right, so what is it that I got myself into? So how am I supposed to behave going forward? I'd love to hear what Brian had in mind going forward in that. Brian, you can call back. This is a situation, Robert Kenya's biggest conversation. Also, we haven't heard from our friend Lydia in a while. Lydia from Parklands. Where are you, Lydia? Would love to hear from you.
And what about Yegon?
And Yegon, where is he? Is he in Matu? Is he
I don't know. You know, Yegon used to travel.
Yeah.
He did.
That time you'd find him in Nandi,
in
then
Matu, then Wajir. Yegon, wherever you are, good morning. We'd love to hear from you as well. So it's 0719-012-600. Your views are important to this conversation that we're having today. What is it? Where are the missing links in the implementation of the Constitution? Also, you can post your comments on Spice FM KE Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as Instagram.
You know, the thing that Alan has mentioned, it's actually textbook correct. If you think about any changes that we've referred to as revolutions around the world, the people who've been at the very forefront of it, who brought it into being, are the so-called middle class. And they are the buffer, really, between the so-called, those who are not in the middle class. I'm trying to think of a word that I could use.
Above the middle or below?
Above the middle class is us, Wananchi. It's not, that one is easy to understand. It's the other fellows. In a monarchy, it's easier to understand because you call them landed gentry. And also, they are the group of people who are the facilitators of the things that actually happen because they are the people who are probably in government. They are decision makers even in the private sector. So, but many of them are comfortable. Let me be precise. Many of us are comfortable. And so we can talk about change, but we don't really feel the pinch.
No.
So this need isn't really big. So in any fight, as in a mental shift that would require change, it's not something we will support easily. No, because that change also means, it may also mean a change of life, my life. And that's something that I'm not ready for.
Ready to change.
Yes.
Speaking of Yegon, our producer John has actually reached out to Yegon and he's on the line. Yegon.
Yes, good morning, Eric Gladys.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. How about you?
Tuko salama kabisa.
A long time.
Yegon, did we say something offensive at some point?
No.
Where are you, Yegon?
In fact, I'm just in Fika Leo, somewhere called Matu. So I've been in Deep Kenya where there's no network, poor net. We are struggling with 1G or 2G, I don't know.
Hey.
Wow.
But it's good to hear from you, Yegon.
Yes,
we've been talking about the implementation of the Constitution, how far we've gone in the journey in this implementation of the Constitution. What do you think so far?
So far, I think for the last 7 years of devolution, we are really trying in terms of default governments. It's only that we still need to hold our leaders accountable, and even the government to stop being jealous in funding its people. Because as per Constitution, there were departments that was supposed to be default fully. And these departments should have been default systematically, maybe after a grazing period. But you find right now, 7 years down the line, the national government are still holding on some default functions. Like agriculture. In fact, agriculture, I don't know how many percent have they default. Because these are the department which is right now dominant in Kenya.
There's an argument there about, policy versus the other arms. If you look at policy and research, the national government could argue, they're holding on to policy and research. And many of the organizations and institutions under the agriculture dockets, which then go to be funded, are those that are dealing with policy or research, which is where the bulk of the money is going.
Both policy and the research should be going hand in hand. Because these people are saying that most of the policies cannot be implemented by the counties without the hand of a national government. But at first, they have not even tried in devolving them. Because the Constitution allows the government to take back some functions if they are not fully functional. So they could have tried in devolving. If it doesn't work, then they return back and do another research to come out with a policy which the county governments can be able to maintain it.
Asante sana. Yegon, thank you very much for speaking to us today. We hope to be hearing from you a bit more often. Now, you're saying that you have arrived in Matu, so assuming that you've come from Wajir to Matu, you'll be heading towards Nandi.
maybe some in the next few weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say
Thanks,
hello to
man.
everybody in Matu.
Thank you, Eric.
Asante sana. It's a situation room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll have to, catch up with some of our ardent listeners like Yegon. We'll be looking out for friend Lydia as well. And thank you for all of you for contributing to the conversations this morning on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and as well as calling in as we are coming to the conclusion of the show. Today is Proverb City.
They that dig a grave for their enemy may very well be digging it for themselves.
Okay. Those that are trying to amend the Constitution.
Or not amend the Constitution in this
So
case.
that they can
Yes.
bury someone.
Yes, or they can gain some benefit, may be achieving the complete opposite of what they imagine. Yes.
All right. That's a good one. That's a good perspective.
It is an interesting perspective, yes.
All right. Thank you very much for your contribution today. Ndu, what is your closing remark on this particular one?
Well, I think it's clear that if it's an uncomfortable position, but it is the decision that has to be made, whether it is continuously speaking out in whatever forum you have, or it's in order to get the majority of the people on the side where they benefit. Agitation needs to happen. After all, how is the pearl formed? The pearl is formed through agitation, through those grits of sand, and you get something beautiful out of it.
Okay. Join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. for more conversations on this. The conversation must continue, as C.T. Muga would say. Now until 3 o'clock, uninterrupted music, and then Monique will be here on Spice Drive, 3 to 7. The adults in the room will take over thereafter from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Eric Latif, Nduoko, C.T. Muga, bidding you goodbye and have a lovely Wednesday. Good morning. It's now 10 o'clock.